Hello, this is your host, Adam Graham, from Pretty Much the Present. And in this video, we'll be bringing you a compilation of old-time radio detective podcasts from 2010. The podcasts are appearing, for the most part, unedited, except for some extraneous or repetitive elements that are being removed because this is a compilation. As I said, these are old, so any websites or offers mentioned may not be valid at the time you're listening unless you find them on our website currently. Now, with that said, here is a week of old-time radio detective podcast. Welcome to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham. If you have any comments, email them to me, box13@greatdetectives.net. Please cast your vote for the show on Podcast Alley, podcastalley.greatdetectives.net. And remember our listener survey, survey.greatdetectives.net. I found yet another show that used the device of an ad in the newspaper prominently in the show, along with Let George Do It and Box 13. And I mentioned that the whole device had its origin in Agatha Christie's Tommy and Tuppence. This one was a show called Results Incorporated. Actually was made during the war. And to me it sounded like pretty much a rip-off of the of Agatha Christie's device, with actually the whole young man, young woman detective team actually set up just like in Christie's novel. So I don't know if we'll actually end up showing that one. I've got to listen to a few episodes. I wasn't terribly impressed with the one I heard, but I would always want to give more than just one episode before deciding about a series. All right, well, we're going to get into today's show with not a whole lot of additional ado. We'll have a brief commercial message, and then we will get into today's episode of Box 13. This one is called The Sad Night. This is Adam Graham for JohnnyDollarAir.com, which is Priceline. When it comes to travel, Priceline gives you choices. Either name your own price on hotels, rental cars, airline tickets, cruises, and even more, or save money with published specials. For great deals on travel and to support great old-time radio, remember JohnnyDollarAir.com.
Box 13, with the star of Paramount Pictures, Alan Ladd, as Dan Holliday.
You dribbling old idiot. What did you do with it?
I'm not going to tell you.
Carl, be careful.
Shut up, Therese. We've got to find out what he did with that copybook.
What's the matter?
Look. He's dead.
Dead? You killed him.
Don't be stupid. He just died. There's no one can prove anything. Just keep your mouth shut and help me find out what he did with the copybook.
Well. Somebody sends me a copybook through Box 13. Now I wonder why. And now back to Box 13 and Dan Holliday's newest adventure, The Sad Night. Just a child's copybook. And on the front cover was the name Marina Layton and a date, the year 1930, written in a childish, scrawled handwriting. I riffled through the pages. There was nothing of interest, at least. That's the way it looked then. But Susie thought differently.
Maybe it's some kind of a code, Mr. Holliday. Like one to a buried treasure.
Susie, with your imagination and my typewriter, we could go places.
Well, gee, the Count of Monte Woolley found a buried treasure.
That's Monte Cristo, Susie. Two different people.
Well, they both had beards. Oh, look.
Huh? What's that?
It's a letter to Box 13. Listen. Box 13. A day or so ago, you may have received a child's copybook in the mail. If you did, I should appreciate it if you'd bring it to the address below. Yours truly, Therese Layton.
Let me see that, Susie.
Here.
6821 Lakeshore Boulevard. Swanky neighborhood.
Are you going to take it back, Mr. Holliday?
Oh, yes, Susie. If only to see how the other half lives. So I went to 6821 Lakeshore Boulevard. I tossed the copybook in the back seat of my car and it bounced on the floor. Maybe I was thinking about anything but the book, for when I rang the doorbell of the big house, I suddenly remembered I'd left the book in the car. I just about started back down after it when the door opened.
Yes?
I'm looking for Teresa Layton.
I'm Mrs. Layton. And you?
Holiday. Dan Holiday. I'm sorry, Box 13.
Oh, of course. Please come in, Mr. Holliday. In the library, please.
Thank you.
Won't you sit down, Mr. Holliday?
Thanks very much.
It's very kind of you to come all this way to return the book. You see, it belongs to my little girl, and I suppose she sent the book to you in, well, mischievously.
Your little girl?
Yes, Marina. Sometimes I think she's a problem child.
Oh, really? How old is she, Mrs. Layton?
7.
Did she tell you she sent the book to Box 13?
Well, no, as a matter of fact, she wouldn't say. Then her father found a newspaper with an advertisement cut from it.
And?
We got hold of a paper with the same date and compared the page.
Nice detective work, Mrs. Layton.
I suppose all this uproar over a child's book seems, well, stupid, doesn't it?
Oh, no, not at all. But there's one question I'd like to ask.
Yes, Mr. Holliday?
You say Marina's 7 years old?
That's right. Why?
There's a date in the book, 1930. It seems to have been written in the same hand as the rest. That date would make her quite a big little girl, wouldn't it?
She put down that date, I suppose, well, not thinking.
Oh, yes, of course. Where is she now, Mrs. Layton?
She's dead, Mr. Holliday.
Huh?
Mr. Holliday, this is my husband, Carl.
How do you do?
I'm very happy to know you, Mr. Holliday. Do you have the book?
You get right to the point, don't you?
Mr. Holliday, our daughter Marina is dead. We want the book merely for sentimental reasons.
Well, I could understand that if your wife hadn't... Well,
lied to you?
Bluntly, yes.
Therese, dear, will you excuse us?
Yes, I'll be upstairs.
My wife isn't well, Mr. Holliday. It's not an easy thing for me to say, but she imagines our daughter is still alive.
Look, Mr. Layton, if I'd ever written a story with as many holes in it as yours, I'd be laughed out of the writing game.
What do you mean?
Your wife says Marina sent me the book, yet you say Marina's dead. You know, you two should get together.
All right, Mr. Holliday. How much do you want for the book?
Oh, now we're getting someplace. What's it worth to you?
500.
Oh? That's a lot of money for a child's copybook.
You asked how much, and I told you. Now, may I have the book?
I don't think so.
It's worth nothing to you, Mr. Holliday. Believe me, it's worth absolutely nothing to you.
All right, maybe I'm just curious. Tell me why you want the book, and maybe we'll do business.
I can't tell you.
Or you won't tell me, is that it?
I want that book. Now.
I haven't got it with me.
You're lying.
All right, search me. I haven't got it with me. I forgot it.
You're going to be difficult.
Look, the book was sent to Box 13, obviously not by you, your wife, or your daughter. You found out it was sent when you traced my ad, right? All right, that means someone else sent it to me. I'll return the book when I find out who and why.
Mr. Holliday, I'm going to get that book.
All right. We'll play a game. Book. Who's got the book? Now, goodbye, Mr. Layton.
Goodbye, Mr. Holliday. You can find your way out, I hope?
I think so. Oh, anytime you want to tell me the reason behind all this, we may be able to do business.
I think we'll do business, Mr. Holliday. Later.
I left, and when I got home, I spent the rest of the day and most of the evening trying to figure out why anyone would be so anxious to get hold of the book. It was filled with a kid's scrawling handwriting, sums and addition, problems in subtraction, alphabets. Then I came to one page and stopped. It was filled with strange, weird-looking figures, as a kid would try to draw human beings. But there was something about them that didn't look like a kid's work. They were grotesque, almost fiendish faces and distorted, twisted bodies. And underneath were 3 words in Spanish: La Noche Triste. The sad night. The words were scrawled too, but somehow they were different from the rest of the book. I kept turning back to that page, wondering, trying to connect something in my mind with those figures in the book. Then I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, it was 3 a.m. Turned off my light, lay back in bed. Then I was getting company unexpected, and I wasn't in the mood to entertain. Well, what a wonderful thing a skeleton key is, like the magic words, "Open Sesame." Somebody was looking for something, and it wasn't Easter eggs on the White House lawn. I waited, and then... Looking for something, Bud? Whoever it was didn't wait for the floor show. I turned on the light. Yeah. He'd grabbed the book, but he had left a knife behind. One that I picked up with a handkerchief. If there were fingerprints, it would introduce me to the gent. And Kling could do me that favor.
Got any idea who it was, Holiday?
No, I haven't, Kling. We had our waltz in the dark.
Oh, it must have been romantic.
Oh, yes, I was overcome. Look, can you get prints off that knife handle?
Seems to me you could pick an easier way of meeting people.
Oh, I like the hard way. It makes for lasting friendships.
Look, did he try to knife you?
Well, I don't think he was doing KP with it.
Why was he after you?
He wasn't.
Oh, I see. He breaks in at 3 a.m. You surprise him, he pulls a knife on you. But he wasn't after you. It was just a social call, or maybe he was a visiting nurse.
Kling, will you see about those prints?
Yeah. If you prefer charges.
Maybe, but more important, he took something I want back.
What?
A child's copybook.
A child... You know, Holiday, the more I see of you and this Box 13 gimmick you run, the more I believe in elves and pixies. Why did you have a child's copybook?
I'm learning to write.
You're going to keep this all to yourself, huh?
Till I find out what it's all about.
Okay. Well, from what you say about the cookie who disturbed your Betty by this morning, he might have a record.
In that case, you can tell me who he is.
You don't want me to pick him up?
No, I'd rather have the pleasure. You see, he hung one on my chin.
He hung one out here. All right. Come back in an hour.
Oh, Mr. Holliday. Gee, I've been trying to get in touch with you all morning.
I was at headquarters, Susie.
Oh, what'd you do?
Oh, no, don't jump to conclusions. Why were you trying to get in touch?
Look.
Huh? When did this come?
This morning, I picked up Box 13 mail at the Star-Times, and that note was in it.
Mm-hmm. Well, as they say in the books, Susie, the plot thickens. In fact, it's so thick now I can't see a thing.
How'd you get that bruise on your chin?
I shaved with a baseball bat this morning.
Oh. Well, are you going to meet Marina Layton?
Yeah, that's what she asked me to do in her letter. So if you want me, I'll be at...
At where she says, the lobby of the Camden Hotel.
So I got to the lobby of the Camden Hotel. It wasn't hard to find Marina Layton. She was dressed as she said she'd be. I took a good look before walking over to her. She was about 24, not pretty, but with one of those faces that always says, wonderful day, isn't it? Okay, so maybe now I'd find out what all the excitement was about. I walked over. Oh, pardon me. Are you Marina Layton?
Yes. And you're...
That's it, Box 13.
You know, I didn't think there was such a thing. I thought this would all turn out to be some sort of a joke.
Oh? Well, do we sit here?
If you like. Well, may I have it, Mr...
Holiday. First name's Dan.
All right. May I have the book, Dan?
I haven't got it, Marina.
But you must have it. Mark said he sent it to you.
Oh, no. Another character in the show. And who's Mark?
He was my father's dearest friend. But surely you ought to know that.
Look, Marina, I don't know a thing.
Wait a moment. Here's his letter to me.
You want me to read it?
Yes.
Dear Marina, for years I've kept something from you that your father wanted you to have. Now I know someone else wants it. But you can have it by writing to Box 13, care of the Star Times. I want to write more, but I don't dare. Just remember your own name is a clue. Love, Mark.
Well?
Well, what? If your father wanted you to have what he gave to this Mark, why didn't he try to get it from me?
Who? Who tried to get what from you?
Your father and mother,
That's crazy. My mother died when I was born, and my father disappeared almost 5 years ago.
Oh, now it begins to make some sense. Not much, but a little.
What are you talking about?
The character who said he was your father, he wanted that copybook of yours. He must have found out in some way that Mark had it.
But who was the man?
I don't know. He said he was your father.
I don't understand all this.
Makes two of us. But listen,
What's the matter?
How do I know you're Marina Layton?
But I am.
Yeah, I guess you are. Because since someone already took the copybook from me early this morning, it'd be a little senseless to try to get it this way. All right, Marina, what do you know about a copybook? Yours, with the date 1930 written in it.
Copybook? Mine? But nothing at all.
Huh? Oh, now, wait a minute. All this business has to mean something. Don't you even remember a copybook?
Well, I suppose I must have had one. Wait, of course. Black, ragged-looking. Alphabets in it.
That's it. Now, what about it?
Oh, nothing. It was just an ordinary book. I scribbled in it and... Did you say 1930?
Well, yes, why?
Because in 1930 I was with my father in Mexico. I had the book then because I was being tutored by Mark, and I used it for my lessons.
Did you write anything in it that might be important?
No, not a thing.
Well, you must have.
I didn't.
Did you write the Spanish words, La Noche Triste?
Why, that means the sad night.
Yes, I know. Did you write them?
No, I don't think so.
Then your father must have. But why?
Are you sure those words were in the book?
Well, of course I am. Oh, would Mark know?
Mark? Why, Mark's dead.
And now back to The Sad Night, another Box 13 adventure with Alan Ladd as Dan Holliday.
We went to the place where Mark had lived. Yes, he was dead. Heart failure, the doctor said. But we learned something else. That he had had visitors the night he had died. And from the description of them, they could have only been the man and woman who posed as Marina's parents. And I learned a few things more from Marina. That her father was an archaeologist, and in 1930 he was excavating Aztec ruins outside Mexico City. It was on the way back to Kling's office in my car that she told me some more.
Father disappeared in Brazil almost 5 years ago. Then the remains of his expedition were found.
And your father?
He died. But he left records, letters for the museum.
And anything for you?
No, nothing.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Wrote letters to the museum, yet nothing for his daughter.
Why do you say it like that?
Doesn't it seem odd that he should leave letters and records for everyone but you?
Yes, it does.
There are a lot of things that seem odd. You wait here, Marina. I'll be right up.
Well, Holiday, just about to leave your office.
Oh, what'd you find out?
You were distinguished company this morning. Little George E. Garson, strong man, general hoodlum.
Well, I didn't think it was little either.
Want me to pick him up?
Yeah, I'd love your company. Okay, Kling, let's go. I want to ask Georgie a few questions. It took Kling about 5 minutes to get Georgie to talk. He told us he'd been hired to get that book, and from his description of the guy who hired him, well, it couldn't have been anyone else but the man who posed as Layton the day before. Then a quick trip to the house on Lakeshore Boulevard. We might as well have stood in bed. The fake Mr. and Mrs. Layton were gone, and with them, the copybook. And that left us at a dead end. But dead. But at the morgue of the Star-Times, Marina and I learned something else.
Uh-huh. I think we got lots of stuff on Albert Layton.
Trot it out, Jonesy.
Yeah. He's the one who got himself lost in Brazil about 5 years ago, isn't he?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, here's a folder on him. News clips, photos.
That's that.
Look, who's this, Jonesy?
Well, let me see. Oh, that's the guy who found Layton, or what was left of the expedition. Name of Carl Bremer.
Oh, Mr. Bremer and the gent who wanted that book are one and the same. Did you ever see Marina?
Not that I remember.
Where were you when your father went to Brazil?
In school.
And you didn't see him again after he left for Brazil?
No.
Jonesy.
Uh-huh.
You know a lot of things. What do the Spanish words La Noche Triste mean to you?
Nothing except they mean the sad night.
Is that all?
Yeah, why?
Because they mean more than that. Marina, can you get a sample of your father's handwriting?
Oh, yes, of course.
And I've got a hunch that Bremer and his wife are leaving for Mexico.
Hey, Dan.
Yeah?
Look, this Layton was an archaeologist. Why don't you go to the museum to find out about him?
Good idea, Jonesy, thanks. But I've got a phone call to make first. If my hunch is correct, we've got to stop Bremer from getting to Mexico.
Let me get this straight, Dan. You want this Bremer and his wife picked up, huh?
Yeah, that's it.
What's the charge?
You pick them up, I'll prefer charges. And maybe one of them will be murder.
What?
Will you do it?
Well, what if they're out of the country by now?
Extradite them.
You've got to have a strong charge to do
Oh,
that.
I have. 1, causing the death of an old man by trying to force something out of him. 2, hiring Georgie Garson to break into my apartment. And 3, attempting to defraud. Is that enough?
Yeah. If you can make those charges stick.
You get them and I'll make them stick. Marina got a sample of her father's handwriting.
Is this what you wanted?
You sure this is your father's handwriting?
Of course. That's a letter from him, just before he left for the interior of Brazil.
But the writing in the book, it was nothing like this.
Well, maybe he didn't write it.
He must have. Wait a minute. Mind if I write on the other side of this paper?
No.
Okay. Now watch. I'm right-handed. But suppose I write like this with my left hand. What's it look like?
Just a scrawl.
Sure, as a kid would write. As you would have written in 1930.
But why would he have done that?
To make it look as though you'd written it.
Well, that doesn't make sense.
It does make sense if you realize that your father had learned something that was big enough to make him want to hide it. And where would he hide it? In a place no one would ever think of looking for it. A kid's copybook.
No, he kept his notebooks. Everything he did was in his own notes.
But not this. You were with him in 1930. What was he doing?
Oh, I told you, working on the Aztec ruins outside of Mexico City.
And what did he find?
His findings were published. The museum has
the museum. What's the matter with me? Come on, Marina. Maybe we're getting someplace.
Yes, of course I know Albert Layton's work. He was a great man. World has lost a genius, Miss Layton. Too bad.
Look, Mr. Dougal, we want you to help us.
I'll do my best. You said over the phone that it was important. Had something to do with our Mexican antiquities here at the museum.
Yes, that's right. What did Professor Layton send here?
Well, come in here, into the Aztec room.
I remember all these things.
Of course, everything isn't here. The Mexican museums were given their share and...
Oh, pardon me.
Yeah?
Look.
What's the matter?
Look on that far wall, those figures.
Oh, yes. Well, they're only copies. Quite well done, of course. The original paintings were lost when the Spaniards destroyed the temples. The Aztecs were jealous and more like people.
Because on the far wall were the same figures I'd seen in that copybook. The same grotesque, weird figures with their twisted bodies and savage faces. There were 3 of them. Their painted eyes looked out at us, seemed to accuse us. I turned to the curator. Mr. Dougal.
Yes, Mr. Holliday.
What are those figures?
Well, they're Aztec gods. The one over here in the upper left is Quetzalcoatl, supreme god of the Aztecs. The one in the upper right is Huitzilopochtli. He's one of my favorites, a god of war. The one at the base of the triangle is Tlaloc, god of rain.
Marina, those were the figures in your copybook. And they were above the words La Noche Triste.
But why? Why should Dad have done that?
Mr. Dougal, what is that triangle?
Well, Where each of those figures is painted was a temple long ago destroyed by the Spaniards under Cortez. In the center was one of the causeways that led to Tenochtitlan. That's today's Mexico City. It was over that causeway that the Spaniards made their escape on La Noche Triste.
La Noche Triste. Look, sit down, Mr. Dougal. I want you to tell me a lot more. The curator talked for an hour, and what he told Marina and me all added up. The copybook, the figures of those old Aztec gods. Oh, Marina's father had something, all right. And he hid it in that copybook. No wonder Bremer wanted it. No wonder old Mark had kept it, and the whole thing made a story that went back over 400 years. A story of greed and bloodshed. One that reached out to touch me, Marina, old Mark, Bremer, all of us. Later in Kling's office, facing the Bremers, with Marina sitting there, too.
All right, Holiday. Let's have it.
First, I'll take that copybook, Bremer.
All right. What good will it do you?
None. And it wouldn't have done you any good either.
What do you mean?
You caused the death of one man to get this. Another man, famous, respected, lost his head and tried to keep what he had found. But it wouldn't have done your father any good either, Marina.
No, I know.
What's the story, Dan?
Well, it really begins, Kling, when Bremer found the remains of the Leighton expedition in Brazil. He found letters, records. He brought some of them back with him, but some he didn't. That right, Bremer?
You know everything. You tell it.
Thank you, I will. One of the letters was to Marina. Marina, whose name is the same as the Indian girl who was Cortez's consort. That was the one you kept, Bremer. A letter telling Marina about the copybook and what it contained.
All right. What is it, Holiday?
Let's go back to July 1st, 1520, to Hernan Cortez and his army. The army that marched through Mexico and destroyed the Aztec Empire.
That's got something to do with all this?
Everything. On that night, the Aztecs rose up in fury against the Spaniards. They had thought Cortez and his men were gods, but they found out differently. They determined to drive the Spaniards out forever. The Spaniards took all the gold they could carry. The Aztecs went after them. They trapped Cortez and his army on one of the causeways that led to the city. The causeways were narrow. There were thousands of Indians in canoes. All night long the battle went on until in the morning 450 of the Spaniards were dead and thousands of Aztecs. But Cortez and a remnant of his army escaped, got to the mainland.
And the copybook?
Those 3 words, La Noche Triste, the sad night, are written into Mexican history as the night Cortez and his army and the Aztecs fought and killed each other until the canals were choked with them. The gold the Spaniards took with them did them no good. They couldn't fight with it or eat it. So sobbing and screaming, they dumped the treasure into the waters of the canal, and it sank into the mud of the bottom. It's never been found. Marina's father thought he had located it. But look. Here's a map of modern Mexico City, where the causeways once ran. There are streets and houses, so you see no one will ever find that gold. And maybe it's just as well. It's too red with blood to be of any use to anyone.
But gee, Mr. Holliday, if all that gold's there, why doesn't somebody go after it?
Oh, you too, Susie?
Oh, no, I guess not. But, tell me something, Mr. Holliday. What were the names of those Aztec gods?
Winkin', Blinkin', and Nod. Good night, Susie.
Next week, same time, through the courtesy of Paramount Pictures, Alan Ladd stars as Dan Holliday in Box 13. Box 13 is directed by Richard Sandville, with an original story by Russell Hughes. Original music is composed and conducted by Rudy Schrager. The part of Susie is played by Sylvia Picker, and that of Lieutenant Kling by Edmund MacDonald. Production is supervised by Vern Karstensen. This is a Mayfair production from Hollywood. Watch for Alan Ladd in his latest Paramount picture.
Welcome back. When they referred to a child's copybook, I didn't quite know what they were talking about at first, just because, when I was growing up, we did penmanship in books, but called penmanship books, but never copybooks. So that was kind of a interesting takeaway. Overall, a pretty philosophical ending with... and a good overall episode. Don't have a whole lot to say about this episode. We're going to go ahead and start with a comment off of Podcast Alley. This one comes, he says, I like the old-time radio shows, especially Pat Novak. I am an English teacher, and I like the banter with Jocko. Too bad there are no English classes, at least on a high school level, that explores Novak's discourses. I think there really is some great literary value in the way Pat Novak is written. It would be an intriguing study. I don't know if high school level, but there's always somebody could start a community education course, or one place you can go and you can actually start a class to teach anything is universalclass.com. That wasn't an advertisement. I don't get anything on that, but I think that would be a very intriguing study. Pat Novak is literature, because I think that in terms of the radio detective shows, it's right up there in with Philip Marlowe in terms of the artistry of it. So, and maybe in some ways even a cut above. All right, well, we're going to get into prepare to introduce you to tonight's program in just a moment. But first, a word. Your ad could be here, and you could share your product, service, or website with our ever-growing audience. We've opened up advertising to small business people around the world with an ad campaign starting at as little as $20. For more information, visit advertising.greatdetectives.net. Or if you want to be a non-commercial sponsor by dedicating the show to a relative or reminding us the important work of a charity, go to sponsor.greatdetectives.net for more information. And now let's go ahead and we'll get into today's show. This is the day, it's kind of bittersweet. It's our last episode of Pat Novak for Hire in existence. Little Jake Siegel. And I apologize in advance. The quality of the audio is... it's probably at about the lowest level that I would consider playing it. But it was the best we could find. And it's, like I said, the last of Pat Novak, so I think fans will bear with us as we go ahead and play this last episode. This one I think is particularly good because in a way it's somewhat stunning in old-time radio. As you just listen to the content of most old-time radio shows, you can't really tell was this just by listening. Well, was this episode towards the beginning of the run, towards the middle, or towards the end? They didn't do the big season finale, and as a kid, I grew up with that. When I'd watch shows in the 80s and 90s, you would have the big season finale, where something dramatic would happen, something shocking, something really, really different that would give you a sense of the character that perhaps you had never seen before, and would leave you wanting more for next season. Well, this episode of Pat Novak for Hire is really the first great season finale that I'm aware of. In radio, with something dramatic that just makes you wonder what's next season going to be like. Of course, it was written as a season finale. It turned out to be a series finale, thanks to the success of Dragnet. And you'll get to, and by the way, if you have our app, you can listen to the Dragnet episode that aired the same day, or aired the day before this last episode of Pat Novak aired. But this is a phenomenal episode from a dramatic standpoint. I just hope that we do eventually get a better quality recording out there. But be prepared for some audio difficulties, but I think you'll enjoy it. I will warn you, the end is clipped, so you miss a few seconds of the closing dialogue, but it doesn't. You don't really miss on understanding the story. So we're going to go ahead and play for you the last episode of Pat Novak for Hire, Little Jake Siegel.
sign outside my office says, "At Novak for hire." Or you can set it to music or put it up in neon. But down here on the waterfront in San Francisco, you're too busy staying alive to worry about the next guy unless he's pointing a gun. Most of the time, you got as much chance as a flypaper fly on a solo flight. But it works out. Oh, I rent boats and do anything else to keep my stomach and my conscience running even. It's like juggling hot marbles on a high wire. But it's a living. You haven't any more kick coming than a swimmer diving into an empty pool. I found that out last Tuesday night. I was sitting in my office after dinner, watching the fog stream through the gate and wrap up the bay for the night. Up on Russian Hill, the lights were just going on in the $1,000 a month apartments, and right away you got a picture of warm rooms and cold martinis. I guess I was feeling sorry for myself, so I started to page through an old address book full of bad debts and tired memories. I was getting over to the page, and the regrets were piling up around my knees when the phone rang. Novak talking.
This is Father May, Patsy. Are you busy?
Yeah, Father. Carrying up any phone numbers.
Are you reforming or angry?
Neither one, Father. They just wore out.
You sound sad, Patsy. Expect them to last forever?
Nothing's that good. What's on your mind?
I want to ask you a favor.
Make it a small one, Father. I'm all out of big ones.
It's a small one, Patsy, for you.
Yeah, another customer told me the same thing, Father. His brother was on the way to the chair. He wanted me to smuggle in some rubber underwear.
I'm asking, Patsy, not begging.
Okay, Father. What do you need?
Can you see me in about an hour, right after the evening rosary?
When's it over?
Oh, about 8:30. But don't be afraid of coming early.
No, I'll take a rain check on that, Father.
That's what Noah's friends used to say. I'll see you at 8:30.
It was a little before 8:30 when I started up the steps of Father Leahy's parish church. I figured the services were over, so I hung around in the vestibule for a couple of minutes, trying to look like a part-time bell ringer. The last few people straggled out, and then an altar boy came out and gave me the high sign. He was a clean, Irish-looking little kid with a face the size of a minute and just about as young.
Are you Mr. Novak, sir?
That's right. You the lookout?
I'm an altar boy, Mr. Novak. My name's Joe Siegel. Little Fifth Father called me.
Yeah. Where's Father Leahy now, Jake?
Back in the sacristy, Mr. Novak. Want you to wait inside here.
No, this will do. I'll wait right here.
No, sir, Mr. Novak. I'm sorry. Father says to be sure and bring you inside.
Okay, little Jake, lead the way. I was too busy trying to act like I knew my way around to pay much attention to that fat, chunky little guy when he stood up in the back pew a couple of aisles over. Little Jake seemed to take trouble in the air.
Mr. Novak, there. What you doing?
All right, Clement, here's a pay out them on a second.
Jake, get down.
Mr. Novak, look out, look out!
Down on the waterfront, you learn early to look for trouble, any place, any time. You can find it at the top of the marsh or at the bottom of the bay. But this is the first time it caught up with me in the middle of a church. The lead got as thick as confetti on New Year's Eve. I spun around and I made a dive for little Jake, but I wasn't soon enough. He went down like young wheat in a hailstorm. When I grabbed for him, I must have hit my head in the base of a marble pillar or something, and things got dark for a minute. I stumbled down the aisle and into the street after the guy, but the odds were all on his side. The fog was so thick you couldn't read a newspaper with a Klieg light. I guess I covered every alley and street in the neighborhood, but it was like running after a hatful of feathers in the middle of a windstorm. Oh, I don't know how much later it was when I stopped for a minute in an empty doorway and I tried to remember what I was chasing. A siren was crying somewhere in the distance, so I started back for the church. The coroner's wagon was just pulling away when I got there, and Father Leahy had disappeared. I saw a light in the rectory, so I went upstairs and rang the bell. He came to the door in his shirt sleeves. He just stood there for a minute looking at me. Then he motioned me inside. You want to see me, Father?
Yes.
In here. Sit down.
The kid, Father. Little Jake.
What do you think?
Yeah. He goes fast?
Instantly.
I'll get the guy, Father.
I'm not asking that, Patsy. I'm not asking you for anything anymore, unless I need trouble.
No, somebody told you a bad story, Father. That wasn't my gun.
I should have known better than to call you. I should have known it meant trouble. It's your middle name, Patsy. You're married to it.
You're looking for the wrong man. It wasn't my party.
I called you here tonight to ask you a favor, Patsy.
Anything you want, Father.
It's too late now. We were going to have an Outer Boys picnic tomorrow at Paradise Cove. I wanted to borrow one of your boats. We won't be going now, Patsy. We've got a funeral instead.
Yeah. What do you want me to say?
Don't say anything, Patsy. Just listen for a minute. I asked you to come up here tonight, but I didn't tell you to bring your friends. If you've got any private fights with those waterfront hoods, that's your business. But don't bring your beasts into the trip.
And I tell you, I never saw the guy before. I don't know anything about it.
He was shooting at you when he hit little Jake, wasn't he? What else am I supposed to think?
Yeah. They find him maybe done?
Nothing yet. Where you send me, Patsy.
I like you better without the temper, Father.
And I liked you better before your hands got dirty, Patsy. I warned you about that waterfront crowd, the cheap thugs, the cheap women. I told you, Patsy, roll around in dirt long enough and some of it's bound to stick to you. You got it all over your face and your hands, and it's working inside you, Patsy. It's working in deep.
That's the end of the sermon, Father?
I tried to warn you, but you had to figure. Well, figure this one, Patsy. There's a 9-year-old kid on his way to the morgue. He stepped in front of a bullet and saved your life. Now go ahead. Figure.
Yeah, I will, Father. But you better be on call when I catch up with the guy. He's going to have a lot of praying to do. When I left Father lazy, I checked in at the church for one more look around. A couple of red-faced Irish cops in uniform were wandering around the vestibule trying to look at home and chewing gum like mad to kill the beer on their breath. And over in one corner, half a dozen old women had their heads together, clucking like hens over a square egg. Outside of them, the place was deserted. I gave the course a quick rundown. A couple of aisles over, where I figured the Dunster must have passed, I picked up a matchbook. The ad on the front said Match Joint, Cicero, Illinois. And there was a phone number scrawled inside the cover. I was just about ready to toss it away when a bell rang, and I took a closer look. It was my phone number. I put the matchbook in my pocket, and I started home for the apartment. Maybe the cab wasn't going fast enough, because halfway there, 3 years' stock of headache caught up with me, and the ceiling started to jump. Oh, the cab driver was kind, though. When we got to my place, he offered to help me with fires the curb for an extra 4 bits. By the time I made it to my front door, I was feeling lower than any man of an Irish wake. The reception committee didn't help much. They were short and dark, all 3 of them, with rows of loose, oily fat where their necks should have been, and small pig eyes that squinted through the cigar smoke rolling out of wide nostrils and up their faces.
Hiya, Novak. How do you feel?
Lots better after you found the door.
Hey, Jack. Novak don't like it. He'll cultivate it, Dave.
No, they don't build stomachs that strong.
Be nice. It's easier that way.
Now, look, Buster, I don't know who you 3 pigs are.
Novak. Remember, be nice.
Yeah, I remember.
You West Coast punks are all alike, Novak. Couple of taps and you cry. Ain't that right, love?
Maybe Novak's tired, fellas. Help him into a chair.
Yeah, Novak. Sit down. Blood wants to say something.
All right, then say it and get out of here.
We want the gun, Novak. And we want the papers that go with it.
Sounds like a great puzzle. Sorry, I can't help with the answers.
You better tell Rod, Novak. It's liable to get rough.
It's all right. My gun's over there on the desk, and the paper's on the wall.
Be nice, Novak. Just once more, Novak. Where's the gun, and where's the papers?
Look, I'll spell it for you. I don't know what you're talking about.
All right. Jack, smack, get his arm. Yeah. All right, hold his head up. Yeah. Okay, lad, there.
This the way they do it in Cicero?
Last time round, Novak, the gun and the papers, where are they?
I don't know.
The gun, Novak. The papers. No use, boss. We lost him. All right. The big floor. Let him find his own way back.
For summer. When I woke up, the sun was bleeding through a rip in the blinds, and there was a funny smell in the room. My stomach felt like a piece of practice rope at a Boy Scout class. And then the room got noisy.
You wake up slow, Novak. Have a hard night?
Oh, you're never on time for the party, are you, Holmes?
I'm Tuesday, Novak. I don't like your friend.
All right, then take up social work. What's the occasion?
I got a phone tip. Thought I'd drop up for a visit.
Having fun?
Yeah. There's a gal in the kitchen bored to death.
Huh?
Take a look.
Keep it hard. Who is she?
Sally Kimball. That's what her driver's license says. Your friend of yours?
How would I know? Even her mother couldn't tell.
Messed up, isn't she, Novak? Must have been a rough party.
I wouldn't know, Hellman. I closed early.
It's your joint. What happened?
I said I closed early. 3 junkies were drinking my scotch when I got home about 10:30. They were anxious about a gun and some papers, and they figured I could put them straight. I couldn't, so they laid me out. Now tell me how sorry you are.
I bleed for you, Novak. Now let's have it straight.
That's as straight as you're going to get it, Hellman. If it's not exciting enough, try Esquire.
You talk brave for a funk in hot water.
I'm not going to scream till it burns.
Then you better start practicing, Novak, because I'm going to burn you.
You better hurry, Hellman. Your pension's catching up with you.
Watch your mouth, Novak. You're not talking to your gentle friend.
Well, that's hard to tell, Hellman. You both use the same technique. Now show me the warrant before I start charging your rent.
That dame's body is all the warrant I need, Novak. Now talk. How did she get so dead?
I told you once. Pick up the 3 gunsels and ask them.
What they look like?
Like you. The size smaller. They're from the east around Chicago.
What else?
They wouldn't leave their birth certificate.
Go ahead, smart boy. Get in all the laughs you can. But don't ask me to con the parole board for you.
Oh, I don't know, Hellman. You won't be there. Maybe I'll like prison life. When you're knee-deep in the rain and your boots spring a leak, you might as well throw them away and take your chances barefoot. Hellman and his boys left with the body, and I grabbed a handful of aspirin and a cold shower. Then I started out to look for the only honest guy I know, an ex-doctor and a boozer by the name of Jocko Madigan. A pretty smart man until he found out you can poison your worries at $4 a fifth. I finally found him sitting in the middle of a bourbon fog in a little Spanish joint somewhere on the edge of the Excelsior district. He was down at the end of the bar trying his best to make time with a plaster bust of Queen Isabella.
Pepsi, you're just in time for a short one. Bartender, hand me that vase.
Come on, Jocko, sober up. I got to talk to you.
Pepsi. Here's to your own peculiar brand of happiness.
Jocko, will you cut it out?
Pepsi, I don't mean to be rude or ungentlemanly, but I don't think I altogether approve of the clientele in this place.
Yeah.
This woman next to me, Pepsi, the one with the stony gaze, she's been here ever since I came in. And I don't mean to be uncharitable, but I think she's the picture of a perfect boy.
All right.
Patsy, to a member of the old Castilian school, there can be no excuse for the conduct she's exhibited. Why, do you know, I was even good enough to buy her 3 rounds of Portuguese brandy, imported, mind you. But what do I get for my pains? Not even a civil thank you.
All right, Jocko.
I've been sitting here in the most gentlemanly way, sipping this delicate nectar in great mouthfuls and trying to keep the party going. But does she help? No. I've talked to her about politics, medicine, literature, Keats, Byron, Shelley, Nick Kenny. I even talked about the weather.
Jocko, she's distracted.
A simple oversight, Patsy. Might happen to anyone.
Listen a minute, will you? I'm in trouble.
You're always in trouble, Patsy, and that's the way you'll stay till you find some kind of moral rudder. You've got to find direction instead of trying to be so righteous in an evil sort of way. Get in tune with our decaying civilization. Like me, Patsy. Why tempt the fates? It's much more practical to buy off your destiny with a good fifth of Irish whiskey.
You also, Jocko?
Yes. What kind of trouble this time?
3 gunsels from the east. They're shooting up the town, and I'm running front for their murder rap.
Patsy, why not plead guilty? The rest might do you good.
Somebody shot a 9-year-old kid, an altar boy.
Oh. Where did that happen?
In Father Leahy's church. The gunsel took me for somebody else and started shooting.
Problem's getting bigger, Patsy. What am I supposed to do?
I want you to check on a guy by the name of Mike Quinlan. Also a girl, Sally Kimball. Tagged by the Examiner and the Chronicle morgues and mowed around the horse parlors out on Eddy Street, will you? Find out everything you can.
Well, all right, Patsy, but you've broken up a beautiful party. You've disillusioned me about Queen Isabella here, and I've suddenly grown dreadfully thirsty again. Let's have 4 or 5 for the road, shall we?
Later, Jocko. We haven't got time.
Well, only if you say so, Patsy. But every time I leave the hallowed confines of a barroom, I'm a poor pilgrim caught up in the vices of the crass everyday world. A tattered orphan leaning disconsolately against the bitter winds of chance, tossed and buffeted about endlessly by the cruel storms of fortune. By the way, I'll need car fare.
All right, here, $50.
Patsy, refreshment.
Later. Now, get going, will you, Jocko?
Where can I find you?
I'm going to check by my office, and I'm going to see Father Leahy.
Well, as soon as he mentions taking the pledge, that's your cue to leave. Good night, lover.
I caught a cab downtown, and on the way I started hunting for just a piece of the answer. But all I got was questions. Who were the 3 gunfuls, and what was the stuff they were after? Mike Quinlan, where did he fit in? And that dead girl in my apartment, who did she belong to? Well, the zeros were piling up faster than flies on donuts when the cab pulled up for a stop sign at 16th and Mission, and a little guy with a worried mouth and a loud sports shirt jumped in. His lips were wound around a phony kind of smile, like a head waiter just before he hands you the check for a big party.
It's okay, driver. We're friends.
How are you, mister? Ben's just comes easy for you, mister. You got a name?
Novak, I want to talk.
You got until the next corner.
We both mean it, Novak. Me and the gun.
Now, look, Junior, if you want to play the heavy, go find a melodrama.
Who are you working for? Sandell?
That's as good a name as any. All right, here's your corner.
Sally Kimbrough. Where is she, Novak?
You're fast with a question, mister. Let me ask you one. Who's Sandell?
I got the gun, Novak.
Yeah, then who's Sandell?
I'll do the asking. You sit there and make the answers.
Oh, you're running out of tickets, Junior. Come here. All right, now reach down for that gun, and I'll slam you through the floorboards. Who's Sandell?
The Chicago hood. He's out to get me. Works both ways.
That's a good plot. Now, who are you?
Mike Quinlan. All right, now what about Sally Kimbrough?
They mopped her up off my kitchen floor this morning.
Somebody's going to get Sandell.
Maybe we're on the same train. What's he look like?
Fat men all look alike.
All right, you can leave any time now.
Sure, Novak. Fare's getting high. See you later.
Went faster than a Mexican divorce. The black sedan pounded by on all 12, and Quinlan folded up like a playpen in a high wind. We tried to follow the car, but it would have been easier to win the Kentucky Derby on a pogo stick. So I went back to the corner where Quinlan was still hugging the cement. He was draped over the curb like a tired carpet, and if his suit was a brighter yellow, he could have passed for a loading zone. Hellman was there with all his relatives in uniform, so I told the cabbie to drive on. I just couldn't seem to shake the picture of little Jake when he went quiet in that church. Well, when I got close to a phone, I paid off the cabbie and I put in a call to Jocko. I called Newton at the Examiner morgue, and he said that Jocko had just left, so I called Bruni. I asked for the guy who was drinking the cheapest whiskey in the tallest glass.
Council Madigan speaking.
This is Novak. How'd you make out?
Let me tell you about these pack of newspaper men down here. Men of high birth, Patsy. True breeding. They like Scotch almost as much as I do.
What'd you find out about Quinlan?
My Eddie Street informant tagged him as an ex-con, Patsy. Sent up for armed robbery in 1940 and paroled about 2 weeks ago from Joliet. Quinlan had a few dealings with a man named Lud Sandell. From what I can gather, Quinlan's supposed to have taken the rap for Sandell and his brother.
What else?
Quinlan's a local boy out of Bernal Heights. He has a sister, Patsy. She belongs to Sandell. She's probably the only sales girl in town with a 6-room apartment in the best part of the marina.
You get the address?
Bayview Towers, down at the foot of Fillmore Street.
Sounds good.
Maybe she has a friend.
Did you get anything else on Sandell?
The Turk Street set tells me he's out here to set up a slot machine route. I gather he's the pushy type.
Thanks, Jocko. I'll see you at the apartment.
Oh, Patsy, on your way home, pick up something for dinner at the delicatessen, will you?
There's stuff in the icebox. Fix yourself a sandwich.
Patsy, dinner without bourbon is life without hope. I'll borrow from the neighbors. Good night, lover.
When I hung up, I caught a D car out on Van Ness Avenue, and I headed down into the marina. The answer box was still stuck with questions, and little Jake Stiller held a 4-lap lead, but at least the field was getting thin. I figured it was 1 out of 3. Sandell or either one of his gumples, but which one? Well, when I got down to the foot of Fillmore Street, the fog was thicker than ankles at a fat ladies' convention, and the foghorns out beyond Yacht Harbor started on overtime. The Bayview Towers was one of those swanky, new-looking places that gets old in a hurry. It saw lots of brass and brunettes during the war, but now the only uniform left belonged to the doorman. I found Quinlan's sister in the penthouse apartment. And when she opened the door, it felt like Clyde Beatty with a broken chair. Her lounging pajamas reminded you of a good butler. They came in and went out at the right places, and they stayed close to the job. I felt like the foot boy after somebody blew out his candle.
Oh, talent on the loose. Want to come in?
Yeah, the free turn. My name's Novak. I got some news for you.
I'm Bobby Quinlan. Look what's so fast.
I'm looking for answers, lady. If you want a companion, advertise. Your brother's dead. Sandell shot him.
My, such a big imagination, Mr. Novak. I don't even laugh. Here.
Look, I got proof in my pocket, baby. You want the rest of this couch now?
That's been lonesome, Novak.
It's going to get worse with your brother gone. Take a look at the paper.
Look.
Yeah, you've been practicing.
You're getting loose, Patsy. I can feel your heart pounding.
Yeah, now let's quiet down and talk murder, shall we?
You're hurting. You're hurting me.
Where's Sandell?
Please, Patsy.
Where's Sandell? Where is he?
See my arm, you'll break it.
Tear it off and throw it away. Now, where's Sandell?
I don't know. I swear I don't.
He killed your brother. He shot him down on the street.
The phone dress, Novak.
All right, if you won't believe me, take a look at this chronicle. Right there on the front page.
You're lying, Novak.
Look at it.
No. Sandell promised. Promised he wouldn't touch Mike.
Why complain? Think how Mike feels. Now, where's Sandell?
He's down at the hotel. The Durban Arms on it. He lied to me, Novak. I played it safe, but he lied to me.
Yeah, you're a mistake, baby. I'll see you later.
Always, Novak. Party's just gone.
Beth, why'd you do it? You lied. You and Sandell, you promised me. And you killed him.
Timorous, somebody had to go.
Like that altar boy, huh?
Got it once, Novak. It's tougher the second time.
There's no second time. Death.
All right, sweetheart. Now take him back.
Yeah. You finished even, baby.
Promise me. I've been wrong. See, Sandell. It's so much blood. Hold me back.
Sorry, baby. You make this trip alone. There wasn't anything I could do for them, so I took a cab down to the Durban Arms on Eddy Street, but Sandell had checked out an hour before. The clerk told me his baggage was still around, though, so I figured that could only mean one thing. I put in a call for Hellman, and then I grabbed a cab and headed for Father Lazy's. By the time I got up on the hill, the fog had taken a lease on most of the town. You can always tell when it's thick because all the sounds out in the bay get a free ride. Halfway there, the driver was ready to quit, but for an extra $2, he threw the cab in second, and we crawled the rest of the way till we got a block from the church. By that time, the fog was so thick you could have sold it for the pound. I did the last block on foot. I was just about 20 yards away when I spotted Sandell and Max the Gunsel standing under a streetlight just outside the door to the church. They waited a minute, and then they turned and started up the steps. Don't bother, Sandell. You called too late.
Huh? Who is it? Who's out there? It's Mark Novak. Novak. Come closer. I can't see you in the fog.
Turn out and get me, Sandell.
There he is, Max.
You're flying blind, Sandell. You made the trip for nothing. I got the gun and I got the papers.
He's lying, Lodge. Come on out, Novak. Make a deal.
I said you're late, Sandell. I already made the deal with Matt.
You're funny, Novak. This'll shut you up.
Not even close, Max. Which one have you got the altar boy?
You sound worried, Novak. You want to tell him what, or should I?
Max deals a lot better than you shoot, Sandell. Ask him about it.
Huh? What's he saying, Max? He's saying nothing, Lud. He's talking crazy. Let's go out and get him.
Ask Mac about this afternoon, Sandell. Ask him where he was when Dex got it. Ask him how I got the gun and the papers.
He's crazy, Lud. I'm not so sure, Max. Don't be a sucker, Lud. Novak's playing cute.
Sorry, Mac. You took the chance.
He's turning you, Lud. He's lying. Could be, Mac, but I can't jump. Got you. Oh!
All right, Sandell. Now it's just you and me in the fog.
Come on in, Novak. We'll work the deal. Come in where I can see you.
All right. It's 5 shots, Blood. You got one left to make good on. All right, Sandell, no reason. Come here.
Let me go, Novak. Yeah. Lay off, Novak. What'd I do to you? Cut it out with him. You didn't get hurt.
Talk to that altar boy, huh?
I didn't mean to hit the kid.
Oh, I'm sick of your mouth.
All right, Novak, that's enough. Novak, I said that's enough.
Yeah.
Let go of him. This Sandell?
Yeah, that's it.
A few minutes ago, we could have booked him for murder.
You can have him now, Helmut.
Saved the state some money, Novak. Neck's broken.
That's you, Patsy? Over here, Father. On the step. Hello, Inspector.
Father?
This the man, Patsy? Yeah, Father, that's him. I'll pray for him, Patsy. Why waste it, Father? He wasn't worth it. They said the same thing about 2 men on a hill in Calgary. Lifted the next morning, things got lots clearer for everybody. The story was the cheap earthy kind, but then so were the characters. After Mike Quinlan joined up with Sandell and his boys back in 1940, they pulled a bank job in Chicago. And instead of cutting in Mike on the tape, Sandell framed him to take the rap for the 3 of them. Then Sandell came west to operate and lined up Quinlan's sister for his girlfriend. By the time Quinlan was paroled, he was fast on Sandell's game, and he had lots to beef about. He lined up enough good evidence to put Sandell and his 2 boys away for life, and then he threatened to spill it if Sandell didn't cut him in for his share of the job and stay white of his sister. Sandell wasn't generous and he wasn't genteel, so he played along with his pen in his cheek and his gun in his pocket. When the time came to swap money for evidence, Quinlan picked the church for a trading ground that was decorated in the box with the evidence. That's where we finally found it. The deal was all set to go when something scared Quinlan off, and Sandell came in, mistook me for Quinlan, his quick little Jake. Sandell's boys tried to get at Quinlan through his girl, Sally Kimbrough, and when she wouldn't spill, they killed her and planted the body in my apartment to take care of the opposition. Snap and second up.
Welcome back. I think Pat Novak to the end when he was just hammering that guy. It was really a change of character in his whole motivation. Wow, I think this was just an amazing episode and a good way to end the season by Richard Breen and Jack Webb, and a decent way to even end the series in retrospect. Well, of course, Pat Novak's done, so what are we going to air next? We're going to do Johnny Madero. I mentioned that a couple weeks ago. Johnny Madero, Pier 23. It's a show that aired in 1947. In between, and it's very, very similar, and I'm understating it, to Pat Novak for Hire. So it'll be somewhat similar. Of course, there are only 2 episodes of that show in existence. So in 3 weeks, we'll be switching over to Jeff Regan Investigator, which at first starred Jack Webb as well. So that's what our show schedule looks like. We got a few more comments to get to, and then we'll wrap up today's program. Dryce's comment on Facebook says, Adam, I love the show. The mix of better-known series is great, especially the good, strong presence of Pat Novak for Hire. But I have a special request, maybe kind of hard to find. There was a show based on Mickey Spillane's character, Mike Hammer, called That Hammer Guy. Any chance we'll hear any of that show? Well, thanks for the comment, Dryce. in answer to the question, there's a chance. I'm still kind of mulling over how I feel about the series. I've listened to a couple episodes. One episode made me feel like, yes, this sounds like this could be an interesting series. Another kind of made me feel like maybe not. But I will definitely listen to a few more. The audio quality is also a little bit off on that, so I want to be sure it's going to be a really good show. If it's going to be a struggle to find good audio. But, yeah, well, I'm definitely going to give that some consideration. It's interesting, the Mike Hammer series, because Mike Hammer, as he was written by Mickey Spillane, there was no way that character would work on the radio. It was like Dirty Harry without a badge. But they really, it's somewhat remarkable to hear how they cleaned him up quite a bit for the radio. But whether they can get it, whether they got it to work sufficiently, I'm still trying to measure. So, all right, and one more comment from Podcast Alley, and it's just a simple, great series. Thanks for your support. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham, bringing you today's episode of Let George Do It. Got any comments? Send them to me, box13@greatdetectives.net. And please cast your vote for the show on Podcast Alley, podcastalley.greatdetectives.net. And remember to fill out our listener survey, survey.greatdetectives.net. So far, we have 92 surveys filled out, so please fill that out. We want to get up to 100. It's good to be able to show sponsors, but it's also a big round number, so we're going for that. Got some comments, actually, on Let George Do It. Chris writes in, just listen to the latest Let George Do It. I really love how this show has matured from the beginning. I did like the comical version it started out as, but the more grown-up version is better. I would like to know if he gets married to his assistant. Don't tell me, I like surprises. Sherry wrote in on the Dragnet show Podcast Alley comments that she could do without the Let George Do It. But this is okay. Part of the nature of these podcasts, and Andrew Rhines has gotten it with the old-time radio westerns, is his host. We love most of the shows in our genre, but some people don't some people don't like the hard-boiled, don't like the soft-boiled, but we serve up enough for everybody. So I guess we could call this Let the Cisco Kid Do It. No, that's the one I always read about on Andrew Rhines. So, but yeah, thanks for the comments, everybody, and thanks for the vote. And we're glad to serve everybody with variety of taste. We're going to get into today's episode in just a moment. Before I get started, I want to remind you to, as you make your travel plans, to remember Johnny Dollar Air, JohnnyDollarAir.com. Which is Priceline, which has helped to revolutionize travel, to put you in charge and allow you to negotiate with airlines to get the best deals as you make your reservations for hotels, airline tickets, cruises, rental cars, and even more. Remember to save money on travel, go to JohnnyDollarAir.com, which leads to Priceline and help support the great detectives of old-time radio. But let's go ahead and we will get into today's episode of Let George Do It. This one is called The Man Who Was Murdered Twice, and it's fairly well done, though I'm sure if you're a fan of mysteries, you'll have heard a similar plot before. But let's go ahead and we'll get into it.
Standard of California, on behalf of independent Chevron gas stations and standard stations throughout the West, invites you to Let George Do It. Another adventure of George Valentine.
Personal notice. Danger is my stock and trade. If it's way over your head and you need discreet, confidential help, call on me, George Valentine. Write full details.
My dear Valentine, as a newspaperman and dramatic critic, I've seldom been wrong. When I have been, the public has preferred my polished, civilized verdict on a play to the clumsy mouthings of my colleagues. But be that as it may, I've discovered a man of the theater who's carrying on a fabulous masquerade and must be exposed. I need facts, and you can get them for me. I suggest
you get in touch with me at my office so we can arrange an appointment. Signed, Jonathan Thorpe.
Jonathan Thorpe, huh?
Yeah.
Just a minute, Brooksy. Where's this morning's paper?
Where it always is after you read the sports page, in the wastebasket.
Huh? Well, here's the great man's column. Today's Theater by Jonathan Thorpe.
Oh, the last time he had a kind word for a play or an actor, he used the rest of the column to apologize.
Yeah, well, burn the incense, Angel. I'm about to read some of Thorpe's deathless prose. I quote, "Since its opening 2 weeks ago, I have been repeatedly warning the unsuspecting public against that dramatic abomination now holding forth at the Majestic Theater. A Wind from the Prairie by Luke Eberhardt could be more aptly titled A Breeze from the Stockyard.
Them's harsh words, partner.
What this play lacks in dramatic construction, it makes up for in sheer illiteracy. Out of sweet charity's sake, I say nothing about the inane high school performance of Mark Guilford, the alleged leading man. In more than 20 years, I've seen some pretty bad plays."
Oh, all right. I get the general idea.
Hey, you know, Brooksy, it might be very interesting to meet this poor man's George Bernard Shaw, so how about making that appointment?
I'll ring Mr. Thorpe and tell him you're here, Mr. Valentine.
Now, that's okay. We're expecting.
Oh, but he likes to be warned. He never can tell whether to expect an actor he's roasted in his column or just a blind man he tripped on the street. I'm his first line of defense.
Oh, the perfect receptionist.
I see you're a member of the Down with Thorpe Society. What have you got against Jonathan?
Oh, nothing. He just won't stop breathing. Right down the hall here on the main floor, the last office.
Come on, Brooksy.
Okay.
Mr. Thorpe, there's a Mr. Valentine on his way to see you.
Oh, I bet he's just a little runt with a Napoleon complex.
Please, Angel, please. You're talking about our client.
Ah, Valentine, come in.
Ah, this is my assistant, Miss Brooks.
How do you do?
It's a pleasure. Sit down, sit down.
Thank you.
Well, Valentine, I suppose you're just corroded with curiosity about this character I mentioned in my letter.
Well, I'd like to know more about him, if that's what you mean.
I am not a malicious man. I live for the theater. I regard it as a sacred temple. It's bad enough to see it desecrated by mediocre talents. I won't have a criminal take refuge in it.
What has this monster done, Mr. Thorpe?
Several years ago, he was the key figure in a rather daring robbery. A robbery which, by the way, has never been solved.
Yeah, go on.
This worthy young man donned a bank messenger's uniform, hypnotized a dim-witted lady cashier with his charm, and walked out with $10,000.
Well, tell me, how did you get this information, Thorpe?
I came up from the ranks as a reporter, Valentine. I have a great many, shall we say, unorthodox contacts.
Well, let's have the name of your man.
Mark Guilford.
What?
You mean the star of Luke Eberhardt's play? The one you've been panning for the last 2 weeks?
That wasn't the reason that I panned it, Valentine. But that is the man. When he decided to take this fling at crime, he was just another unemployed actor.
Mark Guilford, oh, that's hard to believe.
Oh, Miss Brooks, you're just like my wife, Evelyn.
Hmm?
Here, look at the picture. Very young and beautiful, but equally naive. You see, things like this do happen. Excuse me. Yes, Peggy? Who? Oh, tell him
I want to talk to you, Thorpe.
Never mind, Peggy. The wind from the prairie just blew in. What can I do for you, Eberhardt? I don't remember you're making an appointment.
Why don't you lay off me, Thorpe? You got something else to write about besides my play. What do you got against me?
Nothing personal, my dear fellow, except that I find your brainchild particularly offensive. Now, please, I have business with Mr. Valentine here.
Oh, don't mind that. The other critics didn't think it was so bad. You're deliberately murdering it.
If I am, it's a mercy killing.
I don't know why you're doing this, but I'm warning you. Lay off. If you don't...
Bravo! You should be playing Mark Guilford's part. It would be an improvement. Good day, Mr. Eberhardt.
Why, you...
His first play. One is tempted to be kind, but that would only encourage him to write another one. Now, where were we, Valentine?
Tell me, Mr. Thorpe, this business about Mark Guilford. Why don't you go to the police with it?
Maybe that's so simple you didn't think of it.
I'm a newspaper man, Miss Brooks. When I'm sure of the story, all the facts, I'll write it up. Then the police can take it from there. Now, Valentine?
Yeah?
This list. Unsavory individuals, to be sure, but they'll give you the information you'll need about Guilford. And, this check. It'll do as a retainer, I'm sure.
Okay, thanks. Now, how about a couple of passes for the Majestic tonight?
I wasn't wrong when I called you in, Valentine. You're a brave man.
I just want to see if a wind from the prairie could possibly be as bad as you say it is. Besides, I'd like very much to get a load of Mark Guilford in action.
I know it's lonely here, Alice, but we belong in this house. You and I are complete, and our love will be as timeless as those mountains, and always as clean and fresh as a wind from the prairie.
George, you haven't even been listening.
What's that, Angel?
That girl in the front row, you haven't taken your eyes off her.
Wait a minute. Let her go up the aisle ahead of us.
Okay. Hey, George, I recognize her now. The picture Thorpe showed us. His wife.
Uh-huh. Now, let's stay right behind her.
Right.
For Mrs. Thorpe, there was only one person on that stage tonight, Mark Guilford.
Well, I thought he was quite good. And it really wasn't a bad play. I can't blame Eberhard for wanting to see Thorpe roasted on both sides.
Well, Jonathan's campaign worked, all right. The house was half empty.
Taxi!
Where'd you park the car, George?
Oh, wait a minute, Brooksy.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah. Mrs. Thorpe is heading down the alley, straight for the stage door.
And Mark Guilford.
Oh, Angel, I think I want out of this deal.
Why?
It's the old triangle. But with Jonathan Thorpe in one corner, it promises to be nastier than usual.
All his talk about the theater, a sacred temple.
Oh, no, I'm not digging into anybody's past for Thorpe and whatever game he's playing. And, Brooksy, I'm going to tell him tomorrow that it's strictly out of my line.
Oh, it's you again. I'll ring Mr. Thorpe.
It's okay, Peggy. I found a message at my apartment last night. His Highness wants to see me at 11 o'clock, and I sure want to see him.
Is he free, Peggy?
If he left a message for you, he knows you'll be here. He usually gets what he wants. From everybody. You know, I ought to learn to keep my mouth shut.
Look out, you might talk yourself into that yet.
Wait a minute. I don't have you down on Thorpe's list of appointments.
Forget it, beautiful. We'll skip protocol this morning. Now, look, Thorpe, I don't know why you wanted to see me, but I'm here to call it quits. You... Oh, now, listen, you're not that busy. You can at least turn around when I...
What's the matter with him, George?
Hey, just a minute, Brooksy. Oh, if he could turn around with a knife stuck in his chest, it'd be the neatest trick of the week.
The letter opener.
Yeah.
Riley, and he just seemed to sit there as though...
Hey, Peggy, get me Lieutenant Riley at police headquarters, quick. You okay, Brooksy?
Oh, fine. But wait till Riley hears about this.
Yeah, I know. He'll probably... Oh, Lieutenant, this is Valentine. I want...
You've been asking for this, Jonathan. Turn around.
Mrs. Thorpe, put that gun down. Oh, George.
Hang on, Riley. Stay on the line.
I killed him.
You certainly did your best.
But he didn't suffer as much as he made other people suffer. I don't care. I don't care what happens now.
Brooksy, take her over there.
Yeah.
No matter what they do to me. Couldn't be worse than what I've been through.
All right now, Mrs. Thorpe.
Okay, Riley, you can stop your yelling. Yes, those were shots you heard. Jonathan Thorpe, the dramatic critic. Fine Arts Building. Better get over here right away. Now, look, try to get hold of yourself, Mrs. Thorpe.
What? Who are you? What are you doing here?
The name's Valentine. Your late husband hired me to investigate Mark Guilford.
I know all about that. He made sure I did. He taunted me with it. That's why I killed him.
But, Mrs. Thorpe, I think you ought to know that...
Brooksy, let it go on.
I wasn't going to let him wreck Mark's life. I asked him for a divorce, but he couldn't stand the thought of my finding any happiness. Oh, it was all right for him to humiliate me whenever his ego needed some woman to fawn over him. And that girl Peggy outside was one of them. I suppose I should feel horrified at what I've done. But I don't.
George, you've got to tell her.
Tell me what?
You didn't kill your husband, Mrs. Thorpe.
What are you saying?
Just that. Somebody beat you to it.
Valentine, you never come up with a nice, simple murder. Oh, no. The guy's got to be killed twice, just to make things twice as complicated for me. Oh, why do you do this to me?
You flatter me, Lieutenant. I didn't arrange all this just to keep you from getting bored.
What about Mrs. Thorpe?
I still feel as though I killed Jonathan. I meant to. I had murder in my heart.
Well, you'll have to work that out with your own conscience, Mrs. Thorpe. The simple legal fact is that he was already dead when you shot him.
Well, then there can't be any charges against Mrs. Thorpe.
Oh, Lieutenant.
Yes, Valentine.
Now, if I promise, honor bright, not to complicate things, how about me playing along?
Well, okay, but just stay out of my way.
Oh, that'll be easy, Lieutenant. I'm pretty sure what I have in mind would be much too weird for your tastes.
We'll return to tonight's adventure of George Valentine in just a moment. Meanwhile, a word about your vacation inventory. When there's a family vacation coming up, usually it's the lady of the house who keeps a checklist of things to get ready. But there's a man in your neighborhood who keeps a checklist for your vacation, too. You'll find him at an independent Chevron gas station and at a standard station. His checklist is designed to get your car in shape for the toughest trip. So before you start out, better ask him to inspect your car's battery, headlights, tires, spark plugs, and oil. He'll see that everything's in order, that your car's ready to take on all the carefree vacation miles you want to cover. And by the way, while you're at his service station, ask about Polaroid sunglasses. They'll spare you a lot of eye strain in glaring sunlight. Out on the highways and byways, keep your vacation carefree by stopping in at standard stations and independent Chevron gas stations where they say and mean, we'll take better care of your car. And now back to tonight's adventure of George Valentine. Well, if you were in George's shoes, here's the situation in which you'd find yourself. A caustic, well-hated dramatic critic hires you to clear up an unsolved crime. But before you can even get started, you find said critic with a letter opener in his chest. And then before you can even say, well, what do you know, the critic's wife rushes in and pumps her already dead spouse full of lead. At headquarters, George and Lieutenant Riley are trying to bring a little order out of chaos.
All right now, Peggy. Take a good look at Mr. Guilford.
Look, Riley, you don't have to drag this out.
You'd better let the lieutenant do this his own way, Guilford. It'll save a lot of time.
Well, I'm looking, Lieutenant.
All right. When was the last time you saw him?
10 o'clock this morning. He breezed past my desk and headed straight for Thorpe's office. And words began to fly. Not being a lady, I'd be glad to go into detail.
I've already told you, Thorpe and I had a quarrel. He knew the trouble I was mixed up in 3 years ago and was holding it over Evelyn so she wouldn't divorce him. I told him to go to the police with it. Get it over with.
And what did Thorpe have to say?
What did he ever have to say? He just sat there and made with epigrams.
You're on the spot, Guilford. You were in love with his wife and he was digging into your past. That's an awful lot of motive.
Oh, Peggy.
Yes, Mr. Valentine?
After Mr. Guilford left, are you sure Thorpe had no other visitors till I showed up with Miss Brooks at 11?
I ought to be sure. All I have to do at that desk is to watch people go in and out.
We had a fight. Lord knows I felt like killing him, but I didn't.
The coroner's report says Thorpe was stabbed to death sometime between 10 and 11.
I didn't kill him.
If you ask my opinion, Lieutenant, Mr. Guilford did the world a favor.
Young lady, we're dealing with murder.
Just the same, exterminators are paid for getting rid of things like Thorpe. That's a personal character reference, Lieutenant. You know, I ought to keep my mouth shut.
You know, that's a good idea. Oh, Mrs. Thorpe, will you come in now, please?
Mark. Oh, Mark.
Oh, easy, darling,
Let's
easy.
get away from here anyway.
Mrs. Thorpe, Peggy tells us that only one person saw your husband this morning. That is before I showed up.
Then why have you been questioning Mark in here all this time? Well, why? He wasn't there. Tell them, Mark, tell them.
No, Evelyn,
What
you
about
must...
Luke Eberhard? Jonathan had an appointment with him at 10:30. He mentioned it at breakfast.
He never kept it.
I still don't know what that has to do with Mark.
I was there, darling.
What? Well, you promised you wouldn't.
Sorry, Mrs. Thorpe, but there's no question about his being there.
Evelyn, you've got to believe me. I didn't kill him. I had to talk to him about us once and for all.
I'm afraid I'm booking you on suspicion of murder. Come on with me. And if you have any more talking to do, you'd better wait till you see your lawyer.
Wait, you can't lock him up. I'll raise bail for him.
This is a murder charge, Mrs. Thorpe. Oh, that'll be all for now, Peggy. You can go. And thanks.
And to think he once said he might make me the second Mrs. Thorpe. Boy, was I lucky. When will I ever learn to keep my mouth shut?
Oh, I can't believe it. I won't believe it, Mr. Valentine. Mark couldn't have done anything like that.
Well, unfortunately, Mrs. Thorpe, the faith that moves mountains doesn't move the police. They're sticklers for evidence.
Mr. Valentine.
Yeah?
You were willing to work for Jonathan.
Well, as a matter of fact...
All he wanted to do was hurt people. Won't you help me now? Prove that Mark is innocent.
You mean you're putting me on the payroll, Mrs. Thorpe?
Yes. Oh, please.
Okay. Okay, we'll call your husband's retainer check the down payment. Now, you understand, of course, I may only come up with the kind of evidence that'll build the case for the police.
Oh, you won't. I'll take that chance. Mark is innocent.
All right, Mrs. Thorpe, all right. I'll do my best. And I think I'll start by having a chat with Luke Eberhardt, the man who didn't keep his appointment.
I thought you'd be dropping around, Valentine.
Hi, Eberhardt. This is my assistant, Miss Brooks.
How do you do?
She was rather charmed with the way you blew your top at Thorpe's office yesterday.
You know, if I wanted to read things into it, I might even say you were threatening Mr. Thorpe.
I should have pushed that guy's face to the back of his head. Now, get out of here, both of you.
Oh, now, look, friend. Put a lid on that temper of yours. Here, have a cigarette.
I roll my own.
Sure, George, like they do on the rolling prairies. But I don't understand how with all that wind you can...
Does she stooge for you like this all the time? Anyway, the routine leaves me cold. Go on, get out, Valentine.
Wait a minute. Don't crowd me, Prairie boy. I'm here on business. Now, what about that appointment you had with Thorpe this morning at 10:30?
Who made you a cop?
Show him your Dick Tracy badge, darling.
Come on, answer the question, or you will be telling it to the cops.
I don't know anything about an appointment. Get going.
Thorpe was a prissy, methodical man. He kept an appointment book, and he also gave a list of expected visitors to Peggy, the receptionist. You were on that list, Eberhardt.
Okay. I didn't keep the appointment. I was afraid I'd lose my temper and kill him.
Can you prove you weren't there?
Can anybody prove I was? Look, I read the papers. They got Guilford, and they don't want me. Now, out you go.
Wait a minute. You're going to straight arm me once too often.
Look out, George.
I'll do more than that. And stay out.
Well, I'd say Shakespeare Jr. has a tough guy complex.
Yeah, well, next time, Brooksy, remind me it needs psychiatric treatment. Yeah, something therapeutic, like a haymaker.
Oh. Well, now where?
Thorpe's office. There must be something there we've overlooked. Anyway, that's the way I've got to play it. Wow, Mrs. Thorpe. I see you're doing a little private snooping.
I was just going through Jonathan's correspondence. So many people hated him enough to kill him, I thought I might find a letter or a note that would help us. The thought of Mark in jail...
Tell me, Mrs. Thorpe, how did you get into your husband's office? They've got a police sergeant stationed outside at Peggy's desk.
I know. I came in by the fire exit on the second floor and down the stairs on the rear.
Well, you don't say. You know, it might be a good idea for you to stay on the sidelines and let me take care of this. Now, Brooksy, let's be just as methodical about this as the late Jonathan Thorpe would be. First,
Mr. Valentine.
Well?
In this ashtray.
Well, cigarette butts. 5 ordinary cigarette butts. So what?
This one. It isn't like the ones Jonathan has specially made for him.
I roll my own. Remember, George?
Hey, Eberhardt. When he was here yesterday, he wasn't smoking. So he must have been here this morning. I'll take this, Mrs. Thorpe.
He could have known about that fire exit on the second floor, and that's why Peggy didn't see him.
Brooksy, take Mrs. Thorpe over to Lieutenant Riley's.
Right.
Looks like I may have to use that psychiatric treatment on Eberhardt sooner than I thought. So come on, Mr. Eberhardt. You and I are going visiting.
What are you talking about?
We're going to have a little coffee clutch down at headquarters. And you may turn out to be the guest of honor.
See, I'm going to have to throw you out again.
Oh, brother, if you do, I'll bounce right back in your face.
Let's see how you bounce.
You're wide open, sucker. Chin up. Now, you were lying through your teeth before, Eberhardt. You were in Thorpe's office this morning. We found a butt of one of your hand-rolled cigarettes.
Oh, you're out of your mind.
That's right. Come on now, get up and be sociable. Now, you made a natural mistake. Most times people pinch out a cigarette and don't even realize they're doing it.
You're not pinning anything on me.
Hey, what do I have to do to soften you up there? Now, come on.
Okay. Yes, Lieutenant Riley. I was there, just like Valentine says.
Then why did you lie about it when we first questioned you?
Well, I was playing it safe. A lot of people knew how I felt about Thorpe, the way he was needling my play.
Yeah, you were pretty specific about what you'd like to do to Thorpe when I was there yesterday.
Lieutenant, why don't you ask him why he used the fire stairs in the first place?
Oh, Miss Brooks. Miss Brooks, what would I do without you?
And why don't you give me a chance to find out?
Touchy.
Yeah. Well, what about that, Eberhard, huh?
Well, Thorpe really went to town on me in this morning's newspaper. I didn't want that receptionist to come barging in, not before I was through taking him apart.
With the help of a letter opener?
No, he was alive when I left him. In fact, I didn't even touch him.
Why the change of heart?
I suppose he begged your pardon. Pretty please, huh?
He said he was going to stop writing about my play. Didn't fit into his plans anymore, whatever he meant by that.
I think we know what he meant by that, Lieutenant. All Thorpe was ever interested in was giving Mark Guilford the works. With me on the job, he thought that was in the bag.
Eberhard, you know what your story's done for you, don't you?
What? How do you mean?
If Thorpe was alive when you left, that lets Mark Guilford out. Peggy saw him leave the building at 10:15.
Oh, wait a minute.
Now you're the last known person to be in Thorpe's office before Valentine got there, and just a few minutes before that at that.
I don't care how it sounds. I told you the truth.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to hold you.
Well, do what you want, but it won't get you anywhere.
Would it be all right if I went outside and told Mr. Thorpe you're releasing Mark Guilford?
Hold it, Brooksy. Lieutenant.
Yes?
How about keeping the status quo for about a half hour, huh?
Well, forgive my curiosity, but why?
And would you mind getting Peggy, the receptionist, over here?
I still say why.
And would you call the boys in the photo lab and ask them to extend me the courtesy of the profession?
I won't ask why.
One of these days, I'm going to say no to you, even if I have to eat crow for it.
Thanks, Lieutenant. The truth is, when I told you I had something in mind that was on the weird side, well, that was understatement.
This is all very cozy, Lieutenant, but what do you want with me? I told you all I knew.
Oh, this is Mr. Valentine's party, Peggy. Let him go on.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Why can't Mark leave this place now that you know he didn't kill Jonathan?
Well, for one thing, Mrs. Thorpe, there's still the little matter of that robbery.
Oh, for heaven's sake, George, get to the point.
All right. Here, Lieutenant, take a look at this cigarette stuff.
Yeah?
It's hand-rolled.
Sure. That's what put the finger on Eberhard. What of it?
Just this, Lieutenant. When you open it, you see a slight smear of lipstick on the inside of the cigarette paper. This was rolled by a woman.
A woman?
You know, Mrs. Thorpe, a police chemist can always analyze this lipstick and prove it's yours.
Yes, but...
It won't do any good to lie, Mrs. Thorpe. So let's have it.
Looks like everybody gets to play in this game.
No, I'm not going to lie. I did plant that cigarette in Jonathan's ashtray. I knew about Eberhard and his cigarette.
And it didn't matter at all to you that you might be framing an innocent man?
But is he innocent? I knew he kept that appointment. I had to find a way to make him admit it, and I did.
Yes, you certainly did.
Can't you see I had to do it, Lieutenant? When everything looked so black for Mark, I put that cigarette in the ashtray and pointed it out to Mr. Valentine. I had to fight for our happiness. I had to.
Okay. Take it easy, Mrs. Thorpe. All right, Valentine, so she framed the evidence. But it still leaves Eberhard just where he was.
This is just like a movie, Mr. Valentine, but where do I fit in?
Oh, you play a very important part, Peggy.
Oh?
If Mr. Thorpe was so scrupulous about giving you a list of the visitors he expected, now why do you suppose my appointment for 11 o'clock wasn't there?
How would I know?
It was just a message left at your apartment, George. Somebody else could have made the appointment.
Ah, you're so right, Brooksy.
Come on, get to the point, will you, Valentine?
Here is the picture police photographers took of Thorpe's desk as soon as they arrived on scene. There are 5 cigarette stubs in the ashtray, see?
Yeah, that's right.
5 stubs, huh?
Mrs. Thorpe, you couldn't have planted another one at the time you said you did. That would have made it 6, and there were never more than 5. In fact, here it is right in the picture.
Gee, that's right, George.
It happened just the way I told you.
Oh, no. You left it when you stabbed your husband after Eberhard left.
No.
It was the added touch to make sure Eberhard was connected with the crime. Yes, and you made that appointment for me. You needed a witness to say that you shot Thorpe after he was already dead, almost automatically eliminating you as a suspect.
Now, wait, Valentine.
The second time doesn't count, Mrs. Thorpe, but the first time calls for the works.
Golly, George. Jonathan Thorpe must be turning over in his grave.
Well, if he is, Angel, it's with an appropriate epigram.
Here in the paper, after the panny gave a win from the prairie, all the publicity is making it a box office smash.
The little ironies of life. This case was full of them.
Huh? What do you mean, darling?
Well, Mrs. Thorpe, with all her well-laid plans, never dreamt Mark Guilford would blunder in that morning and make himself the number one suspect.
Mm-hmm. And the cigarette she planted. Instead of clearing Mark, just placed the guilt on her.
One final bit of irony. The biggest slip she made was the most obvious, but one we overlooked at the time.
Oh, what was that?
Well, look, Angel, when you come in and send 3 bullets in the general direction of a man's back, you're bound to wonder whether he's still alive.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, Evelyn Thorpe didn't. Now, she went right into hysterics. You see, Brooksy, she already knew he was dead.
Some folks claim that one motor oil is just like another until a mechanic tells them they need a new set of piston rings. But folks who use RPM motor oil find piston ring troubles are few and far between. This premium quality motor oil is compounded to keep a cooling lubricant on upper cylinder walls at all times. Whether your car is standing cold for hours at a time or running hot, RPM clings to vertical engine parts left bare, exposed to wear by ordinary oils. And because RPM is always on the job, your chances of engine trouble caused by rust are reduced to about 0. That's mighty important when you remember that hidden rust causes as much as 80% of engine wear in the average car. No wonder RPM motor oil is the choice of Western motorists 2-to-1 over any other motor oil. For trouble-free operation and longer car life, get RPM tomorrow at independent Chevron gas stations and standard stations where they say and mean, we'll take better care of your car. Next week, when you tune our way for another adventure of George Valentine, you'll hear...
I am cornered, and this is a desperate plea. Could you be at my apartment tomorrow morning? It's signed Joyce Dunning.
Husband, wife, best friend, the time-worn triangle, Brooksy.
Yeah, but something new's been added, darling. The third member of the triangle doesn't usually get such consideration from the rival female in the case.
Yeah, but Brooksy, I wonder if Miss Dunning's reference to death could be a refined way of hinting at murder.
Tonight's adventure of George Valentine has been brought to you by Standard of California on behalf of independent Chevron gas stations and standard stations throughout the West. Let George Do It stars Robert Bailey as George with Frances Robinson as Claire. Wally Mayer appears as Lieutenant Riley. Tonight's story was written by David Victor and Herbert Little, Jr. and directed by Don Clark. Also heard in the cast were Ramsey Hill as Jonathan Thorpe, Virginia Gregg as Evelyn Thorpe, Betty Moran as Peggy, Peter Leeds as Mark Guilford, and Jeff Chandler as Eberhard. The music is composed and conducted by Eddie Dunstetter. Your announcer, John Heaston. Listen again next week, same time, same station, to Let George Do It. This is the Mutual Don Lee Broadcasting System.
Welcome back. Well, I can say this almost for certain, that Jackson Gillis or his co-writer probably had some issues with a drama critic. Actually, this is among... one thing I like about this show is that they really put in some effort at creating these great supporting characters. You know, all of these characters, other than George and Brooksy and Lieutenant Riley, are basically one-shot characters, but they've got real professionals playing them, good writing to back it up. The one thing that's notable about this show, because as you're listening to the end credits, you hear Wally Mayer, who is a regular on the show, and you hear Jeff Chandler in the credit together. What's interesting about that, from a detective standpoint, is that Wally Mayer actually played the part of Michael Shane, the first Michael Shane on the radio, and then Jeff Chandler would later on play Michael Shane in a much more celebrated version of the show. So, interesting little bit of trivia to have both Michael Shanes in the same episode. And we'll end up hearing both of those versions of Michael Shane later on. Today, of course, is Sherlock Holmes, and we're going to get into that in a second, but we've got some listener email to go through. Mary writes in regarding the immortal Sherlock Holmes, the Mercury Theater adaptation of Sherlock Holmes we did right before we started the Rathbone Bruce series. And along with being a fan of Sherlock Holmes, I always have been a Perry Mason fan. It's been fun hearing Raymond Burr in various old episodes. Pat Novak and Dragnet and Fort Laramie. Are you familiar with that old Western? I've heard of it. I did a double take at the end of the immortal Sherlock Holmes episode when I heard Ray Collins credited as Dr. Watson. Sure enough, when I replayed it and mentally filtered out the British accent, there was Perry Mason's nemesis, Lieutenant Tragg. It was a fun discovery. Well, thanks a lot. Yeah, I didn't catch that because I didn't watch a whole lot of the old Perry Mason growing up. I mainly saw some of the 1980s revival of Perry Mason. But good catch there. An interesting fact. Also got a couple comments off Facebook regarding our the movie. David Haroon wrote, "Wonderful news. I really enjoyed the Sherlock versus the Nazis. It took me back to when I was very young, racing home on a Friday to catch the Sherlock Holmes movies on BBC2 at 6 o'clock. I'm a sucker for the oldies. Keep them coming, Adam. By the way, the app is great." Well, thanks for the comment, David, and glad you enjoyed the movie. Also, comment from Lori. I watched this movie last night and loved it. Thanks, Adam. And we'll be announcing our next movie tomorrow on yours truly, Johnny Dollar. And it will actually be played on Sunday, March 7th. And now a brief word about our sponsorship options. Your ad could be here, and you could share your product, service, or website with our ever-growing audience. We've opened up advertising to small business people around the world with ad campaigns for as little as $20. For more information, visit advertising.greatdetectives.net. If you want to be a non-commercial sponsor by dedicating the show to a relative or reminding us of the important work of a charity, go to sponsor.greatdetectives.net for more information. And now on to today's show. Now, there was a missing episode between last week's show and this week's one. The Remarkable Worm on April 16, 1945 is missing. However, given that we actually got to listen to 3 episodes in a row, it's almost, like I said, not worth mentioning. This one comes from April 23rd, 1945, and it's the Notorious Canary trainer. This one comes from an era in Holmes' life after he had retired. Actually, Sherlock Holmes in the books retired in 1903 to beekeeping. And there were a couple adventures that came after that when they... So this is kind of a rare story here. Let's go ahead and we will get into it. Today's episode is called The Notorious Canary Trainer. We will listen and then we'll come back.
This episode from the life of Sherlock Holmes will be transmitted to our men and women overseas by shortwave and through the worldwide facilities of the Armed Forces Radio Service. Petri Wine brings you Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce in the new adventures of Sherlock Holmes. The Petrie family, the family that took time to bring you good wine, invite you to listen to Dr. Watson tell us about another exciting adventure he shared with his old friend, that master detective, Sherlock Holmes. Say, and I've got a little something to tell you myself. I want to tell you that if you haven't sent in for your free recipe calendar, I think we've still got enough on hand to take care of you if you hurry. The requests have been pouring in like mad, literally by the thousands. No wonder. It's really a terrific offer. It's a calendar for 1945 and 46. It's in full color, and it tells you all you have to know about cooking with Petrie wine. Write to Petrie Wine, Petri, Petrie Wine, San Francisco 26, California. San Francisco 26, California. But better hurry so we can get your recipe calendar to you immediately. And now let's drop in on our good friend, Dr. Watson. Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening, Mr. Foreman.
Where are the puppies tonight?
Well, I found them playing with a dead seagull, so they've been sent up to bed in disgrace.
Well, you certainly look comfortable yourself, Doctor. What's that small blue book you're reading, the latest bestseller?
No, indeed not. This book was never a bestseller, my boy. It's entitled Practical Handbook of Bee Culture, with some observations on the segregation of the queen.
Quite a catchy title. Who's the author?
A fellow by the name of Sherlock Holmes. He was engaged in writing it when the adventure I'm going to tell you about took place.
Well, you told us last week, Doctor, that a pair of canaries played an important part in the story.
That's quite right, Mr. Foreman. It was in the summer of 1908, I remember, and I'd persuaded Holmes to leave his Sussex bee farm for a few weeks and to join me in a holiday at the little fishing village of Kingsgate in Kent. We were staying at a charming little inn called the Fisherman's Arms, and for the first few days, our holiday was a delightful one. And then,
I suppose, Doctor, strange things began to happen.
They did indeed, Mr. Foreman, they did indeed. Very strange things. One afternoon, we'd just finished a late tea, I remember, and were sitting outside on the lawn sunning ourselves and enjoying our pipes. Holmes lay back, with his long, thin fingers clasped behind his head, gazing thoughtfully at the multicolored fishing boats bobbing at anchor in the harbor. After a moment or two, he spoke to me.
Watson, you're really a splendid companion. I can't think of anyone else who would let me smoke my pipe in silence for half an hour without asking me what I'm thinking about.
That's not very surprising, Holmes, after all the years that we've been together.
Well, nevertheless, the gift is a rare one, old chap, and I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, old fellow. By the way, since the half hour's up, what have you been thinking about?
A lack of enterprise of a modern criminal. Audacity and romance seem to have passed forever from the criminal world. Read this note I received this morning, old fellow. See for yourself how low I have sunk.
Oh, let's have a look. Mr. Holmes, I am staying in the same inn as yourself, and as I have had a very frightening experience this week, I thought perhaps you would help me. Please do. It's signed Mary Victor.
An exciting document, isn't it? Written on lavender notepaper, reeking of perfume, and the handwriting is obviously that of an adolescent girl.
You haven't bothered to answer, of course.
Oh, yes, I have. I sent a message back by our good landlord that I would be glad to see her.
Why, Holmes? You came down here to complete your handbook on bee farming.
Oh. Confound it. Those two wretched canaries are getting their sunbath on the windowsill above us.
Oh, I think it's rather jolly to hear little fellows chirping away up there.
Oh, I find the sound most distracting. Let's go inside.
You know, Holmes, those birds are owned by a charming couple, Mr. and Mrs. Wainwright. I was chatting with them on the stairs this morning.
I'm afraid their charm will escape me as long as their pets continue to tweet in that irritating manner. You've spoken of the peace and quiet at the country inn, Watson, and yet I find that... Come in. Ah, Miss Mary Victor, I presume.
Yes, Mr. Holmes.
Please come in. Close the door, won't you? Thank you. This is my old friend, Dr. Watson. You may speak quite freely in front of him.
How do you do, Miss Victor?
How do you do, Doctor?
Now, sit down, young lady, and tell me what's troubling you.
Mr. Holmes, I came down here from London to get away from someone, but I've been followed. I've been afraid to leave the inn. Until last night I felt I couldn't stand being cooped up any longer. So I went for a walk on the seashore. Someone followed me, Mr. Holmes. I ran back here as fast as I could, but now he knows where I live, and I'm frightened. Please help me.
My dear Miss Victor, I'm afraid you must be much more specific before I can help you. Who has followed you down here, and why are you afraid of him?
I'll tell you the whole story. It'll sound strange to you, but I swear it's... Oh, there he is again, down by the gate. I'm going to my room.
Now. Don't you be frightened, Miss Victor. I'm sure we'll be... Oh, why so? Extraordinary thing.
I don't see anyone outside who might have frightened her. There are 2 or 3 fishermen loitering about. Wait a minute. Here's a young fellow walking up the path. Come on, Watson. Out through the French windows again.
Oh, good gracious me. Here we go again.
I think we'll take the liberty of accosting him. Excuse me, sir.
Yes?
Are you looking for Miss Mary Victor?
Is she young and pretty?
Yes, sir. She is. Extremely so.
Then I'm looking for her. Where can I find her?
I can see you're being facetious, sir.
Well, there's no harm in that, is there? By the way, who are you gentlemen, may I ask?
My name is Holmes, and this is my friend Dr. Watson.
I'm Basil Carter. You're not Sherlock Holmes, are you?
That is my name.
I thought you seemed familiar. I know your brother, Mycroft.
Oh, indeed. Then I presume you're connected with the Foreign Office.
Yes, I'm in the consular service.
Are you staying at the inn, young man?
For a few days. It's funny that I should run into the great Sherlock Holmes.
Why, may I ask?
I was planning a murder.
Oh, really?
But with you gentlemen here, I see that I shall have to be very discreet.
Who is your intended victim, may I inquire?
There are 2 of them. The 2 canaries in the room next to mine.
Oh, canaries. For a moment I thought that you were really serious.
But I am serious. The wretched creatures have been driving me mad.
I quite sympathize with you, sir. I've been thinking of committing a slight case of mayhem on them myself.
We can take one apiece, Mr. Holmes. Well, I'm glad to have met you both. I'll probably see you again.
Goodbye.
Well, goodbye, sir, goodbye. I don't like that fellow, Holmes. If you ask me, he's the man who's been frightening the poor girl that came to us. He had a peculiar look on his face when you asked him if he was looking for Mary Victor.
Well, there's only one person who can settle the question, and that's the young lady herself. Come on, old fellow. Let's go back indoors.
Shh. Here comes Wainwright, the owner of the Canaries. Good evening, Mr. Wainwright.
Good evening, gentlemen.
This is my friend, Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
I'm honored to meet you, sir.
How do you do, Mr. Wainwright?
Beautiful evening, isn't it? I just took a stroll down to the store to get some more birdseed. By the way, Mr. Holmes, I hope our canaries don't bother you. Little fellows are such a comfort to my wife and me.
Oh, no, not at all, sir. I find their chirruping very soothing.
Oh, I'm so glad. Good night, gentlemen.
Good night, sir.
Good night, Mr. Wilson.
Not Wilson, Mr. Holmes. Wainwright.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I'm so sorry. I thought you said Wilson.
Good night.
Well, not like you to mix up names, Holmes.
I didn't mix them up, old fellow. I never forget a face. Mr. Wainwright is in reality Wilson, the notorious Canary trainer, whom I had the pleasure of sending to prison for a 7-year stretch in '95. Some years later, he made one of the most spectacular escapes from prison in the history of crime, and has since managed to evade all efforts to recapture him.
Great Scott, he seems such a sweet old fellow.
Well, possibly he's reformed, but I doubt it. Our stage is set for an intriguing problem, old chap, and our cast is an interesting one. A frightened young girl, a diplomat of uncertain integrity, and a noted criminal. Watson, I have a feeling that once again the game's afoot.
Holmes, why are we strolling along the pier instead of staying at the inn? I thought you said that you were expecting trouble.
I am, old chap, and I'm sure it'll find us out.
You know, Holmes, I'm still completely mystified by the behavior of that girl, Mary Victor. I knocked at her door last evening, again this morning. I couldn't get any answer.
And the landlord told me that she was not seen at dinner last night, nor at breakfast this morning, and yet her room has not been vacated. Curious.
Hello, there's the village constable sunning himself at the end of the pier.
Yeah. Good morning, Sergeant Blake.
Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson. How are you, gentlemen?
Well, splendid, thank you, Sergeant, and very appreciative of the weather that you've provided for us.
Oh, think nothing of it, sir. We always arrange that for our really distinguished visitors. By the way, Mr. Holmes, I was reading one of your friend's stories about you last night. The one called The Adventure of Mysteria Lodge.
That was, Wisteria Lodge, you foolish fellow.
Well, maybe it was. Anyway, I was reading it aloud to me old woman. And if you don't mind my saying so, Mr. Holmes, we both thought you made a bad mistake.
Oh, really?
Though, of course, you come out all right in the end.
Dear me, Sergeant, I stand reproved.
Excuse me, Sergeant. Holmes, look. Look at that figure standing by itself right at the end of the pier.
Mm-hmm. Our friend Wilson, the Canary trainer.
He's got a revolver.
Here, we don't want any of these goings-on in Kingsgate.
Come on.
Here, you. What are you doing waving that revolver about?
Keep back, the three of you.
I'm the law here. Don't you tell me what to do.
Keep back, I say. I'm not afraid to fire.
Better do as he says, Sergeant. He's no one to trifle with. Just exactly what are you up to, Wilson?
You've caught up with me once again, Sherlock Holmes. But this time you're not going to send me back to a prison again, and maybe the gallows. If I can't escape you, then I'll take my own way out with this revolver.
Wilson, what in thunder are you talking about?
The murder at the inn last night. I did it.
Murder?
I'm confessing in front of the three of you, so you leave my wife alone. She didn't know anything about it. Now, I hope you're satisfied, Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
He's pointing the revolver as he hits.
Wilson, you fool, stop it!
Strike me pink. He done it. Over the pier and into the sea.
Get help, Sergeant. It's possible he isn't dead.
Right, sir.
Come on, Watson.
We're going back to the inn, I suppose.
Of course we are. We've just heard a murder confession, but we don't know who has been murdered.
Holmes, what was the telegram that you sent off just now?
A message to my brother, Mycroft. The innkeeper informed me that Basil Carter, the young diplomat we met yesterday, left the inn rather hurriedly in the early hours of this morning. Come on, let's go upstairs.
Well, we'll have to break the news to Mrs. Wainwright, I suppose.
Before we do that, I think we'll see if Miss Victor's in her room. Which one is it?
Here, top of the stairs.
You could take the liberty of looking in. Miss Victor hasn't been seen since last night. Uh-huh. Unlocked.
Lord, what a mess. Clothes strewn all over the place, open suitcases.
Yes, it
Look at
looks
this.
as if the young lady had been planning an immediate departure.
Where can she be? No one's seen her since last night.
Oh, I beg your pardon, gentlemen. I thought I heard Mary Victor come in. I'm Mrs. Wainwright.
Mrs. Wainwright, I'm afraid we have some rather bad news for you.
Your husband shot himself a quarter of an hour ago at the end of the pier, and his body fell into the sea.
Is he dead?
We must presume so, madam. I left the police sergeant there searching for him. Sergeant Blake should be back here any moment now.
So he did it. After all.
You don't seem very surprised, madam.
He threatened to do it.
Mrs. Wainwright, before your husband shot himself, he confessed to committing a murder in this inn last night.
A murder? Whose murder?
At the moment, we're not quite sure.
Oh, he must have been out of his mind.
Mrs. Wainwright, I'm afraid I must ask you some rather painful questions. Are you aware that your husband was a criminal, that he served a prison sentence under the name of Wilson?
Yes, I knew that. He told me when we were married 2 years ago. But he said that he'd gone straight ever since he'd come out of prison. That's why he changed his name. He was trying to make a fresh start.
You know no reason for his planning to kill anyone at this inn?
None. And unless you find someone murdered, I wouldn't give too much thought to it.
Yes, if you'll forgive my saying so, madam, you seem remarkably unmoved by your husband's tragedy.
Why should I pretend? We were very unhappy together. This might be the best way out of it for both of us.
Oh, for my soul.
My husband carried quite a large amount of life insurance. In the event of suicide, would that be payable?
It's on the policy, madam. But I must say that, from your attitude, I begin to doubt whether your husband is dead.
What do you mean?
I mean that if Mr. Wilson, or if you prefer it, Mr. Wainwright, wished to disappear in spectacular style, what could be simpler than to pretend to shoot himself, drop into the sea...
Mr. Owen!
I'm up here, Sergeant. Ah, did you find him?
Yes, Mr. Holmes. We fished him out right away. Dead as a doornail. Shot himself to the head, he did.
Well, that disposes of your last theory, Holmes.
Did you find the revolver, Sergeant?
Yes, ma'am. Got it right here with me. One bullet missing. Have you found out if anyone here's been murdered, Mr. Holmes?
I found out very little as yet. Wait a moment. Listen.
I don't hear anything.
Exactly, you hear nothing. Yet we're within a few feet of the Wainwright's room.
What do you mean, Mr. Holmes?
I mean that there is one sound we should be hearing very clearly at the moment. Why did I think of it before? The sound of your canaries chirruping. We've heard little else for days. Come on, Watson.
Where are you going?
Your room, madam. I'm afraid I must dispense with asking your permission.
You're already in my room. It seems a little late even to mention the subject.
Here's the bird cage and the windowsill. Oh, the birds are gone.
No, old chap. If you look more closely, you'll see them on the bottom of the cage.
Let me open this door and get one of them out. By Jove, Holmes. They're dead.
And yet when we entered the inn a few minutes ago, they were still chirruping.
But who on earth would want to kill a couple of birds?
That, my dear fellow, is one of the things we have to find out. So far, I must admit I'm puzzled. We have a self-confessed murderer, and the nearest thing we can find to a corpse is a pair of dead canaries.
We'll bring you the rest of Dr. Watson's story in just a second. A second I'll take, if you don't mind, to ask you if you've ever had a glass of Petri California sherry. Because if you haven't, boy, you want to remedy that situation pronto. Try that Petri sherry before dinner some evening. Look at its clear amber color. Smell the fragrance of those luscious grapes. And get a sample of that Petri flavor. That Petri sherry can turn the usual before-dinner lull into a main event. And say, if you like your sherry dry, as I do, wait till you taste Petri Pale Dry Sherry. Is that ever good? But after all, when it's a Petri wine, it's always a good wine. And now, back to tonight's new Sherlock Holmes adventure. Strange events are taking place in the Kentish fishing village of Kingsgate. A self-confessed murderer has committed suicide, but his victim cannot be found. As we rejoin our story, the great detective and his old friend Dr. Watson are once again examining the room of Mary Victor, one of the missing guests.
You know, Holmes, the murder that Wilson confessed to before he committed suicide might have been the killing of those two canaries.
I think not, old chap. Wilson obviously loved the creatures. He kept them in spite of the fact that they were dangerously apt to identify him with his criminal past. Uh-huh. Interesting. Very interesting.
Huh? What have you found?
This note, lying on Miss Victor's bed table. Yeah.
Let's have a look. You think you can hide from me, Mary, but you can't. Wherever I go, I shall follow you, so why not get wise to yourself and stop running away? Sounds as if the poor girl was in danger, all right.
Possibly, but the writer of that note was certainly obliging. Though the letter is unsigned, he at least gives us a clue to his identity.
Oh, what clue?
The phrase, get wise to yourself, is very un-English. It's American. Come on, old chap.
Well, where are we going now?
The envelope to this letter has the Kingsgate postmark on it. I should be surprised if that fount of all knowledge, the village postmistress, can't help us find an American visitor.
Yes, I know the young man you must be looking for, gentlemen. His name's Walter C. Bunker. He's been in here to send telegrams, and his accent's so strong you could cut it with a knife. Just like one of the Red Indian fellows you read about, you know.
Can you tell me where he lives, madam?
That I can, sir. He's been rooming at Mrs. Bell's house, 15 Laburnum Grove, down behind the gas works.
15 Laburnum Grove, Mrs. Bell. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very much obliged to you. You, Mrs. Bell?
Yes, sir. What can I do for you, gentlemen?
Well, we understand that Mr. Walter Bunker has been staying with you, madam.
That he has. A nice young American gentleman.
Is he at home, may I ask?
No, sir. And I'm worried about him. This morning, when he goes out, he asks me where the nearest cemetery is.
Cemetery? Oh, gracious me. Huh?
I tell him, and then he gives a queer kind of laugh. I'm not sure I'll see you anymore, he says. And then he walks off, and I haven't seen him since. I tell you, I'm worried about him, gentlemen.
And where is the nearest cemetery, Mrs. Bell, the one you directed him to?
About 3 miles from here.
Mm-hmm.
Just this side of Branson Woods.
Thank you, madam. Come on, Watson. The cemetery seems deserted. There's music coming from the church.
Oh, Lord, it's a funeral.
Or a wedding. Come on.
By Jove, it is a wedding, Holmes.
I'm afraid we're on a false trail, but we'd better make sure.
Quiet, gentlemen, please. The ceremony is just ending.
Just one question. Can you tell me the names of the couple who've just been married?
Miss Mary Victor from the inn, and a young American by the name of Bunker.
Thank you. Yes, we have been following a false trail, confound it. The frightened young lady was merely frightened by her persistent American fiancé.
The threatening letter that he sent her.
Ambiguously worded, when you come to think of it. Anyway, we can cease to worry about Miss Victor. As she is now Mrs. Bunker, I think we can assume that she's out of all danger.
We've got to start all over again.
Oh, no, my dear fellow. The field is narrowing. We'll head back to the inn now, and I have a feeling that we're on the last lap of our strange adventure. Yes, here's another suspect eliminated. This telegram is from my brother Mycroft. I telegraphed him earlier on today to check on the movements of Basil Carter, the young man who left the inn so mysteriously in the early hours of this morning. His answer informs me that the gentleman in question was recalled to the Foreign Office suddenly and arrived quite safely a few hours ago.
Well, now I'm completely puzzled.
And I, old fellow, at last see daylight.
Wish I did, Mr. Holmes.
Sergeant, go upstairs and get the dead man's widow and bring her to my room, please.
Right.
And then I think I can give you the solution to this problem.
What do you want with me, Mr. Holmes?
Just sit down, madam. You and Sergeant Blake make yourselves comfortable. Now, in the first place, the murder occurred this morning and not last night.
I know what you're hinting at. The Canaries. I admit I killed them. But you can't do anything to me for that.
Why did you kill those birds?
I hated them. As much as my husband loved them. And when I knew he was dead, their singing drove me mad. And so I killed them.
But they must have been already dead when we told you of your husband's suicide.
True, Watson, but the lady was fully aware that her husband was dead when we informed her of the fact. You see, she murdered him.
You're talking rubbish.
Yes, Mr. Holmes. How could she have murdered him? We saw him shoot himself before our eyes.
Because when Wilson raised that revolver to his head, he was convinced that it contained blank cartridges. Unfortunately for him, his wife had deliberately replaced the blanks with live cartridges.
But great heavens, why? How?
Let me reconstruct the case for you. Wilson, with the connivance of his wife here, had contrived a disappearance plot. He knew that I had spotted his real identity, and so he planned this rather dramatic exit. Confessed to a non-existent murder, and then, well, had his plan materialized, he was to shoot himself with a blank. All from the pier, an apparent suicide.
What a fantastic scheme, but how did he plan to get away?
Well, he would have swum under the water, safe distance, and so made his escape.
Oh, his plan couldn't work possibly.
No, probably not, not. But at least it was ingenious. He would have destroyed his true identity and have had his revenge on me by making me search for a murder that had never been committed. Unfortunately for him, his wife was his accomplice and saw in the scheme an excellent way of killing her husband.
You think you're so very clever, Mr. Holmes, but even if it were true, how could you prove it?
Observe this revolver, Mrs. Wilson. It's the one your husband shot himself with.
What can you prove from that?
Ever hear of fingerprint tests?
I've heard of them. But that revolver's been underwater.
True, quite true. But thanks to the researches of my excellent friend, Dr. John Thorndyke, an infallible test has been discovered for recording fingerprints even after immersion in seawater.
What?
I applied the test to the prints on the revolver and the bullets and compared them with some that we found on the water glass in your room. They are the same, Mrs. Wilson. Now, does a man let his wife load his suicide weapon, Sergeant Blake? I think it's obvious that the time has come for you to take over the case.
All right, so I did change the bullets. I hated him. I'm glad he's dead. And what's more, I'd do it again.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes, Sergeant Blake?
Well, now that I've taken Mrs. Wilson to the station and booked her on a murder charge, I wonder if you'd mind answering a question.
With pleasure.
This fingerprint test. I'd like to know about that. I never heard of being able to take prints after a revolver has been handled 2 or 3 times and soaked in salt water.
Yes, Holmes, and I'd like to know when you performed the test and took the prints off the glass in our room. I thought that I was with you all the time.
You were, my dear fellow.
Well, then
I can give you the answer in one word. Bluff.
What?
There is no such test, my dear Watson. It would be almost impossible to expect clear prints after so much handling, and totally impossible after submersion. Fortunately for us, though, Mrs. Wilson was gullible enough to believe me and give me a confession.
And there's no such person as Dr. John Thorndyke?
Oh, yes, indeed there is. He had great success last year in the case of the red thumb mark.
You didn't tell me about that case, Holmes?
No, I didn't. It was deliberate, old chap. With your taste for writing sensational stories, I was afraid you might publish the affair.
Oh? Would it have mattered if I had?
Oh, yes, it would.
Huh?
You would have given away, what shall I say, professional secrets. You would have provided the public, and in particular, the criminal public, with a complete education on fingerprints. And when that happens, my dear Watson, we shall have no tricks left. That will be a sad day for detectives.
Tonight's Sherlock Holmes adventure is written by Dennis Green and Anthony Boucher and is based on an incident in the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle story, The Adventure of Wisteria Lodge. Mr. Rathbone appears through the courtesy of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and Mr. Bruce through the courtesy of Universal Pictures, where they are now starring in the Sherlock Holmes series. The Petri Wine Company of San Francisco, California, invites you to tune in again next week, same time, same station. This is Bill Foreman saying goodnight for the Petri family. Sherlock Holmes comes to you from our Hollywood studios. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.
Welcome back. Wow, he bluffed his way out of that. Actually, pretty interesting plot up until the final bluff, as the revealing key. You feel like there had to have been a better resolution, but at this point, they had done more than 75 plus straight weeks of shows, and the writers as well as the actors may have been in for a little bit of a rest. All right, well, we got a couple more comments on Podcast Alley, and then we'll wrap up the show. Comment, I love the different shows every day, a fun slice of Americana, and love this guy and the cool shows. Well, thank you so much for your comments. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham, bringing you today's episode of yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Got any comments? Email them to me, box13@greatdetectives.net. Please cast your vote for the show on Podcast Alley, podcastalley.greatdetectives.net. And please fill out our listener survey, survey.greatdetectives.net, and help us get over that 100 survey mark. And as we get started here, also remember Facebook. This weekend is you can vote today, you can vote Saturday, and you can vote on Sunday until I actually check the poll results on how we'll do ads in the show, whether at the beginning of the show or in the middle of the episode. So go and cast your vote. If you're not part of our Facebook page, become a part. Facebook.greatdetectives.net. And we got some comments and some programming announcements. First of all, I'm pleased to announce our next movie will be The Bat, starring Agnes Moorehead and Vincent Price. It's a bit of a B picture, but we're limited to public domain, and it was definitely interesting. We'll be posting the trailer for The Bat over at our website, so you can go and take a peek over it at greatdetectives.net. If you have the app, since we have Vincent Price in this movie, I'm going to go ahead and, along with the commentary that I do, I'll actually go ahead and we'll do an episode of The Saint as a preview. We're going to get to The Saint on Great Detectives, but it's just a sneak peek of The Saint to hear what I think was probably some of Vincent Price's best work. Also, if you have the app, next month's extra on Monday is when it'll be posted. It will be Alan Ladd in the Lux Radio Theater presentation of Shane. And the movie can't be played, but the Lux Radio Theater presentation of it can be played in one of the greatest the greatest films of all time adapted to radio. So remember, on Monday, that is your extra from the Lux Radio Theater. Comment from Podcast Alley. Love the detectives. I started listening 15 years ago when I bought my dad The Shadow. I listened and fell in love with him. I'd rather listen to Sam Spade or Johnny Dollar than watch TV any day. Imagine, people, it's good for you. And that's a good public service announcement. I got an email from Jeffrey who writes, just discovered your program on iTunes. I'm now a subscriber. Like the way your show is put together. Mixture of good programs, media information, and advertising, which is not intrusive but informative. Couple of items. Bob Bailey, he was my favorite Johnny Dollar. That's probably the most common opinion, and I agree. The 15-minute episodes in particular were fantastic. And I actually listen to those as I'm getting started on my workday, one 15-minute episode. So, absolutely, it's great. And if you like Bob Bailey, be sure to listen on Wednesday to Let George Do It. Podcast suppliers, I'm getting a little on in years, so please slow down a little bit so I can catch the names of your show and podcast companies. That's a good reminder. I think probably one of my greatest deficiencies is the attempt to spade through everything. So, apologies on that. That is the one thing I have to be most careful about. Well, we're going to get into today's episode of Johnny Dollar. This one is called Otto Schmedlich. And before we play the show, I've got an ad. I actually produced an ad using some music from the 15-minute episodes, and I hope you enjoy the ad and also enjoy today's show. The following is an accounting of expenses incurred during the Vegas vacation matter. Item 1, $224. Airfare from Los Angeles to Las Vegas and a 3-night hotel stay at the MGM Grand. Item 2, $95.26. Hertz rental car for 3 days. The relatively low cost of these items are due to the travel packages offered by JohnnyDollarAir.com, which is Priceline. Whether you're heading to an exotic locale to stop an insurance fraud or simply taking a trip to unwind, remember JohnnyDollarAir.com for all of your travel needs. The numbers provided are from actual search results on February 19, 2010. Your exact numbers may vary. And now, on with the show.
Well, anyway, I learned the answer to the question, what does a doctor do when a doctor needs a doctor?
This is another in the adventures of America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator, Johnny Dollar. At Insurance Investigation, Johnny Dollar is only an expert. At making out his expense account, he's an absolute genius.
Expense accounts submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to American Volunteer Liability Insurance Company, Hartford, Connecticut. Attention, Homer Shalley, General Manager. The following is an accounting of my expenditures during my investigation of one of your policyholders, Dr. Otto Schmedlich. Or, an apple a day sent the doctor away. Or, it couldn't have happened to a bigger worm. Expense account, item 1. 80 cents cab fare to your office in answer to your call. Tip to driver, $1.
Oh, morning, Mr. Dollar.
Hiya.
Go right in, Mr. Charlie's expecting you.
Thanks, sir.
Good morning, Dollar.
Good morning.
Sit down.
Thank you.
I'm sorry we had that unfortunate altercation over the last expense account you submitted to this office.
Oh, that's all right.
Of course, it was ridiculous. You're going around tipping cab drivers $1 after a 50-cent trip.
Well, you know me, Homer. Just a silly, headstrong, impetuous boy.
It was somebody else's money, yes. We've been through all that. What I want to talk to you now is... here it is. Dr. Otto Schmedlich, Los Angeles, California.
California? Doesn't anything ever happen in Hartford? I've been using an airplane seatbelt so much lately, I'm about ready to throw away my suspenders.
Dr. Otto Schmedlich. I suppose you're familiar with the existence of that type of insurance policy which protects doctors against charges of malpractice.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Well, we had the rare misfortune of issuing such a policy to this quack Schmedlich.
Well, what do you want me to do? Go out and take his temperature?
Dollar, when I want to laugh, I tune in Jack Benny. Now, this is serious. The policy we issued to Dr. Schmedlich only covers him up to the extent of what is construed as accidental malpractice. If we can prove criminal malpractice, we can cancel the scoundrel's policy.
Do you have a good reason to think it's criminal, or are you just toying with a happy thought?
Look, our company has already paid off on 2 claims. Recently, we've heard rumors about this man. It seems the Medical Association is watching him very closely. But so far, no one can prove anything. Now, Dollar, do you want the assignment?
No. Well, I'll take it. Expense account, item 2, $194.04. Airfare, Hartford to Los Angeles. Item 3, $4.50. Cab fare, Los Angeles Airport to the Sun Tower Medical Specialist Building, which I first spotted looming through the smog on Wilshire Boulevard, high in the high-rent district of the City Beautiful. Item 4, 55 cents, 11 nickels. Spent telephoning the Schmedlich office at 15-minute intervals until I at last found the doctor not in. In California, the doctors really specialize. And the buildings they work in sometimes really make the most of it, as I found out in the elevator going up.
Second floor, eye, ear, nose, and throat. Doctors Care, Kreider, Whitehiss, and Osterban.
Pardon me.
Third floor, fractures, strains, sprains, and dislocations. Doctors Fowler, Woodruff, Toigo, and Brown.
Oh, pardon me.
Fourth floor, obstetrics, orthopedic, pediatrics, and general practice. Doctors Small, Collier, Reynolds, Frank, Stanley, Feinbaum, and Schmedlich.
Would all these medical terms you just tossed off by any chance mean that we have now arrived in the land of the mechanized stork?
To put it crudely, yes.
Thank you, Jack Armstrong.
Good afternoon.
Hello. Dr. Schmedlich in?
Well, no, I'm sorry, he isn't.
Oh, good. I mean, that's too bad.
Just what do you mean?
Well, I meant to say that, since the doctor isn't in, I want to talk to you anyway. You're prettier.
I should be. I'm a girl. Now, is there something I can help you with?
Yes, as a matter of fact, you can. I have sort of empty feeling around my heart. What would you prescribe?
Bicarbonate of soda. Is that all?
Touché. Now I have an empty feeling around my head.
Please, will you state your business?
Oh, now, honey, you should know that anybody who walks into a doctor's office wants to live. And after seeing you, I really want to live. What are you doing tonight?
Well, I am not in the habit of making dates with strange men.
Who's strange?
And furthermore, you are perhaps the most insufferable, egotistical
Now, if you just
person.
give me a chance, darling, I'm sure I'll be able to prove you're right.
Why, I wouldn't be caught dead, would you? Oh, Johnny, you ain't.
You like that, huh?
This is the first time I've ever tasted champagne.
Good old champagne. The rich people 7-Up. Well, here's to us.
To us.
Doreen, I feel like talking.
Well, thanks for putting me on guard. Listening to you can do strange things to a girl.
I want you to know more about me. I'm an insurance man. I didn't go up to your office hoping to see the doctor. I wanted to see his nurse. You.
Why, Johnny Dollar, if you try to sell me...
Oh, hey, now, wait a minute. Hear me out. You can probably guess it's getting pretty tough trying to sell insurance these days. More than anything else, a guy needs a new angle, and I've got one. People who go to doctors are worried about their health. Now, people who are worried about their health are worried about the security of their families. So, they become good prospects for insurance policies.
No, but at the same time, are they also bad risks?
A lot of them are, yeah. But they can't pass the insurance physical. But there are plenty of others. You should know the figures prove that as many healthy people go to doctors as do unhealthy. Perhaps the most popular disease in America is hypochondria. And the national headquarters seems to be located right here in Los Angeles.
I see. And from me, you want a list of Dr. Schmedlich's patients?
Smart girl.
Smart boy.
Expense account, item 5, $1.40. Cab fare to Doreen's apartment, where I told the driver to wait. Expense account, same item, part 2. $28. Waiting time, before I took the cab the rest of the way back to my hotel. Expense account, item 6. Breakfast the next morning. 2 hard-earned dollars for 2 soft-boiled eggs. The hen that laid them must do barnyard bits in the movies. At least at those prices, she could have autographed them. At 9:30, I was right on time for my morning appointment with Doreen to pick up the list of Dr. Schmedlich's patients, a half hour before the doctor was due to arrive.
Well, Johnny, Johnny, for a man who stayed up so late, you're very punctual.
Oh, that's me. The early worm who so often gets the bird. You got a copy of the list?
Yeah, got here at 8 to type it for
Oh,
you.
fine.
Here it is.
So this is wonderful. You're a doll. Yeah. A. Aarons. He'd make the top of any alphabetical list. Look, this is a selfish way of saying thanks because I'll enjoy it more than you will, but dinner at Romanov's tonight?
I love it.
Good.
Good morning, Miss Smith.
Oh, good morning, Dr. Schmedlich.
Oh, his patients already?
Oh, yes, Doctor. This is Mr. Dollar. He's from out of town.
Good morning.
Well, all right. What's the matter with you?
Oh, it's really nothing.
Well, let me be the judge of that. I will make the diagnosis. I will see you in a moment.
Johnny, I don't know what happened. He's never come in this early before.
I don't mind that, but I wish you hadn't made a patient out of
Well,
it.
I just had to say something. He wants to know about everybody who comes in here. Johnny, you'll just have to go through with it. We can't let him know about the list.
Okay. But what's this going to cost me? What does the old squarehead get for a checkup?
$50 a consultation.
Oh. Honey, instead of Romanov's for dinner tonight, we'd better make it a drive-in.
Sorry, Johnny, I am.
You can come in now, Mr. Lawler.
Oh, well, with a D, Doctor. The name is Dollar.
Oh, yes, I forget. I have so many cases on my mind. Now, if you will be so good to slip off your jacket and your shirt while I talk.
All right.
Now, what is the nature of your complaint?
Well, my back. See, I was in a small automobile crack-up driving out here.
No, that's a dangerous, complicated area, the back. Now, if you'll be so good to get up on the table and lie down.
All right.
No, on your stomach. The feet down here, please. That's good. Now, I tap your back. When I reach the painful area, please to tell me.
Yes, Doctor.
Mm-hmm. Oh, very well muscled, Mr. Dollar. No bruises, strange.
There it is.
Aha. Well, not dangerously near the spine, but very interesting. Here, I think this will help. Oh!
At first, it felt like a big bee sting about a quarter of the way up my back. Then came the buzzing inside my head. Whatever kind of liquid lullaby the good doctor sunk into my spine, it really rocked me to sleep. I had time to move my head and watch Schmedlich put down the hypodermic, walk across the room to my coat, and take from it the list of his patients, plus my wallet containing my identification. But I didn't give it a second thought. I didn't have time to. For me, the lights went out.
In just a moment, we will return to the second act of Johnny Dollar. But first, assets, one block of wood. Liabilities, more trouble than the legendary paper hanger with the hives. It sounds as though Edgar Bergen had a pretty bad bank balance, doesn't it? But luckily for you, he comes back week after week to the CBS studios with his block of wood named Charlie and lets himself in for more trouble. As for you, you're really in the chips when you take in the Edgar Bergen Charlie McCarthy show, heard over most of these stations every Sunday. Don't miss their brightest, gayest show tomorrow night on CBS, where this fall you hear them all.
Tune in this fall for the show that you love best of all. Listen carefully, here's the address. It's CBS.
Now, with our star, Charles Russell, we return to the second act of yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
In my racket, sleeping on the job isn't always fun, and this was one of those times. Waking up from Dr. Schmedlich's slumber treatment for nosy people carried with it a dark brown taste in the mouth, thickness of the tongue, and big bells ringing in your steeple. I was scoring on all those counts when I rolled open my eyelids, which fought me all the way. I sat up and found myself on a hard canvas cot in a bare room with soft walls. They were padded. The window wasn't much. What there was of it was barred. So was a tiny opening in the upholstered door. At first, I thought I was going crazy. Then I realized I was in the kind of place where they put people they think have already joined the ranks of the enchanted. It took me only 10 years to make it over to the door before I looked out through the small slit. Hey! Hey, come here, someone! Hey, room service!
All right, wait a minute, I'm coming. Hold up your horses. Now listen, mister, the first thing you learn in here is we don't like noise. Makes the other patients nervous.
Okay. Where am I? Who are you?
I'm your nurse.
Oh, sorry I didn't recognize you. I thought nurses were supposed to wear little caps.
I got a little cap, but I don't wear it indoors. Hey, listen, you. Don't go making fun of me, you'll be sorry, see?
I'm sorry now. How'd I get in here anyway?
Well, all I know is this place is for your own good. They say outside you're dangerous.
You can depend on it. If I ever get out, I will be.
What'd you say?
Nothing.
You're one of them, all right, talking to yourself.
What's your name?
Well, it's none of your business, but I'll tell you. I don't like people calling me hey you, so I'll tell you. My name is Foggy.
Okay, Foggy. Listen, all I want is a chance to talk to somebody who's in charge. How about it?
That's easy. When your time comes, the boss will be here without no asking. You get one visit from the boss every day, just like all the others.
When'll that be?
Just before supper. So why don't you go back to sleep? That won't be for 4 more hours.
Oh, dandy. Who is this boss? What's his name?
The boss is not a he. It's a she. And her name is Dr. Doreen Smith.
I had 4 hours to think of different ways of calling myself a sucker. At the end of hour number 1, I ran out of fingernails. At the end of hour number 2, I ran out of patience. And the other 2, I spent devising torturous new ways of getting even with a combination that shanghaied me into that fancy 4-walled straitjacket. They had left me only one move to make. It was out. I figured that if the winsome Dr. Doreen Smith paid me a visit, she'd come with her body well guarded, probably by the charming, be-muscled behemoth, Nurse Foggy, who, from what I saw of him through that slit in the door, was no Florence Nightingale, believe me. For him, I needed a club. I didn't have much to work with. The iron and canvas cot was heavily bolted to the floor, as was the only other piece of furniture in the room, a small but sturdy table. Took off one of my shoes, ripped the heel off in an angle of the cot, and looked lovingly at the shiny little nail points gleaming back at me from a solid piece of leather in the palm of my hand. I put it to work, ripping a 4-foot square of canvas out of the cot. Then I put both of my shoes into the center of the square, picked up the corners, tied them together close to the weight, gave it a heft, feeling that I now had at least the start of a weapon.
Hey, you! Here we are.
Oh, I suppose you think that's good news.
He's safe, Dr. Smith. He's still groggy from that stroke.
Don't trust him. Grab his arms when you go in and hold on. Now go ahead, I'll follow.
Don't try any tricks. He won't hurt you, see?
Thanks, Nursey. I wouldn't.
Think of it!
Come here, you! Back in here, sweetheart. Oh, dropped your hypodermic. Planning on rocking me to sleep again, huh?
Yeah, go on me.
Sure, but let me tell you something. This is one squirrel that's going to get out of this cage. Don't rub my fur the wrong way. My head aches. I'm seeing double. My nerve ends are whipping me to death. And for 2 cents, I'd punch you square in the nose. Because one thing for sure, you ain't no lady. Now, sit down. Stay there while I put on what's left of my shoes.
You better go back to Hartford, little boy. This is too big for you.
Being around you will make anybody grow old in a hurry.
What do you think you're going to do?
Right now, I'm going to take your keys, lock you in here with Sleeping Beauty there, and then I'm going after a breath of fresh air. Have fun, the two of you. You can make a peach of a pair. I stumbled through the rest of the building, which turned out to be nothing more than a country house. There were no other rooms like the one I had just vacated. For that matter, there were no other so-called patients. It could have been a place maintained for the purpose of making people talk, or keeping them from talking. There was no telephone. I couldn't call out, but neither could anybody call in to find out that something was going wrong. This little crime crib was apparently located well out in the country. That meant that Dr. Doreen Smith had arrived in the car, which I commandeered and drove to the nearest filling station. No longer having in my possession that list of Schmedlich's patients, I flipped through my memory and came up with a single name I had noted in his office. A. Aaron.
Hello?
Hello, is Mr. A. Aaron in, please?
It is Aaron speaking.
Oh, good. Mr. Aaron, I'm representing a group of West Coast druggers. I'm making a survey. Where do you have your prescriptions filled?
It is at the Enjoy Pharmacy on Beverly Boulevard.
Oh, I see. One more question, Mr. Aaron. I know that in many cases people go to the pharmacist recommended by a doctor. Is this the case with you?
Yes, that is right.
Well, thank you, Mr. A. Aaron. Pardon me, Mr. Anjoy. The clerk up front told me where I could find you. My name is Burr. I'd like to have a word with you if you have the time. On the basis of ethics, the state of California should have picked up the gentleman's pharmaceutical license and issued him a barber's permit. Mr. Anjoy loved to talk. From the 2,000 words he threw at me during the ensuing half hour, I managed to sift the following information. Dr. Schmedlich's prescriptions were usually refillable, dangerous, and habit-forming. I also managed to memorize the names of a few of his patients from the narcotics book. With these tucked into a lonely corner of my cerebral cortex, I limped out into the newborn night. Expense account item 7, 50 cents, having the missing heel on my shoe replaced by late working cobbler. Checking the owners of the first 4 names drew me nothing but blanks. The 5th drew me closer.
Come on in.
Her name was Millicent Royal. She was the kind of girl whose family takes up a full page in the Blue Book, and whose personal habits take up full pages on police blotters.
Well, don't just stand there. Come in.
Thank you.
Sit down.
Miss Royal, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm an insurance investigator.
I don't want any.
You don't understand. I said investigator, not salesman. I want to get a line on a doctor. Otto Schmedlich. You recognize the name?
I might, but I'm not sure it's any of your business.
Look, little lady, let's quit sparring. I've tailed friend Schmedlich this far, and now I want some information. What have you got?
Nothing. He's a fine doctor, a wonderful doctor.
I don't think he's doing you any good at all.
You don't know anything about me.
I'm afraid I do, more than you think. I know enough about Dr. Schmedlich to know that he's doing a lot of people a lot of trouble. I want to put him out of business, and you can help me. Oh, look, honey, Schmedlich is the one that needs protection. You do. You and the other people on the same spot you're on. Why don't you do yourself some good?
I think you better leave now.
Okay. Perhaps I'd better drop around to the home of Quincy P. Royal, Bel Air.
My father? No, don't do that.
And give me some answers.
You can't make me. Nobody can. Anything that passes between a doctor and his patient is a secret. Nobody can make me say it, not even the judge.
Whoa. Wait a minute. All right. If you change your mind, I'm staying at the Park Beverly Hotel. I'll trip them up sooner or later. If I have to, I'm turning it over to the federal men. Narcotics department.
Why did I ever let you in here? Get out. Leave me alone. Go away. Please. You can't make me do anything.
Well. Is my estranged wife having a lover's quarrel?
Bill, get this man out of here. Make him leave me alone.
I don't see why I should rescue you from anybody's clutches. But you, I don't like your look, so get out before I bust you in half.
You know, you look like just the guy who might be able to do it. Happy honeymoon. My hangover from Dr. Schmedlich's health cure hit me again as I hit the street. What I needed was a hot shower and a cold drink. After the water hit me in the face, and a trifle of the same hit the scotch in my glass, I sat down in the big easy chair in my room, posing for a picture. Johnny Dollar, lonesomest man in town. I was mixed up in something mighty big and mighty wrong, but something I couldn't as yet put a finger on. Up until then, I had to go on with ability, experience, and instinct, all unacceptable to the police as evidence. I asked myself why I hadn't called the law and told them about my party with the lady doctor and the man nurse. Then I answered myself that if I did, I'd probably be the one charged with assault, battery, and whatever else they wanted to trump up. Again, it would only be my word against that of an established medical man and his doctor-type nurse. So I decided to leave Doreen and her monster-type nurse where they were until I could turn them over to the cops. 4 drinks later, I was beginning to realize that those kind of troubles don't drown easily. And then the phone rang. Yeah?
Dollar?
Yes, this is Dollar.
This is Millicent Royal. I want you to come over right away. Right away.
Wait a minute. What's the matter?
I changed my mind. I'll tell you everything. Anything you want to know.
Now, listen, Millicent, take the advice of an old hand at this sort of thing. If you want to help, tell me now, over the phone.
No. You can't trust telephones. Somebody's always listening.
Oh, listen to me. It never fails, Miss Royal. You're playing around with the kind of suspense they like to put into movie scripts. The dame calls with some hot information she's afraid to spill over the phone. Then when the investigator gets there, she's dead.
Hurry. Goodbye.
I went there. I was right. She was dead. That gave me 2 people to go looking for. I didn't know where her estranged husband, Bill, lived, so I went to work on the doctor. His all-night telephone exchange gave me the information that he had called in just before leaving the hospital on his way to the office and could be reached there in 20 minutes. I was apparently closer than he was, so I walked over to the building and up to the 4th floor. There were lights on in the Schmedlich office, so I walked in.
What do you want?
I came here to see the doctor, Bill, but I was going to get around to you eventually. I just came from your wife's apartment.
So did I.
That's what I mean. You've got some talking to do.
I know who you are, but don't go getting any ideas. I didn't kill her. I loved her.
It didn't sound like love when I met you in the apartment.
We made up right after you left. I went out to get her something from the drugstore. When I came back, she was dead. That's what I'm doing here. I'm waiting here to kill the man who did it.
How do you know it was Schmedlich?
Because after you left her apartment, she called the doctor and told him if he didn't stop shaking her down, she was going to tell you the whole story.
And he threatened her, and she called me. What was the grounds for blackmail? Narcotics?
That's right. He got started on her during a long illness she had. After she was well but still needed the drug, he told her he'd see that her family heard about it if she didn't pay him off.
Nice guy.
He wrecked us, wrecked our marriage, made a victim of her. And she wasn't the only one. There were others. He made drug addicts out of them and then threatened to blackmail them if they didn't pay off.
Can you prove all this?
I can't prove it. Nobody can. The cops, the medical association, they've tried, but Sherlock is clever. Too clever. When I blast that monster out of the world, I'll be curing it of a big sickness.
Now, hey, take it easy. Look, I know how you feel, but you haven't got the right answer. Why don't you let me take over?
Stay out of it, Dollar. I never belonged to any Boy Scout troops. I'm not joining now. You know what they say, an apple a day? Well, I've got one here for the doctor. You see this? It's left over from Guadalcanal.
Sure do see it. A pineapple. Army type. Hand grenade.
Well, I'm going to feed it to him.
Oh, Bill, now look, I know you're upset, but don't forget, those things were designed to take care of more than one man. Have you thought of that?
I've thought about it a lot, and it still all adds up. I haven't got a thing left to live for. Hey. That's him.
Bill, you're off your rocker. Don't do it. Give me that thing.
Shut up. Stand away. What is this? What are you two doing here? Come and get it, Schmedlich! A bomb!
Before the grenade could explode, I did. With one foot, I kicked Bill mightily in the shin bone. With a pin pulled, I only had about 5 seconds. I took 2 steps, and with the other foot, I kicked the grenade out to the corridor, then I hit the floor.
All right. I'll still take you to pieces, Schmedlich.
I let Bill go to work on the doctor until he had shocked him into a state of unconsciousness. And to save Bill from a murder rap, I did the same for him. With a loose, portable typewriter. Sorry, but it's time to typewrite the tagline, William. P.S. Then I called the police. Expense account, item 8. $50. Airplane rental, Burnsley Charter Service for flight to Palm Springs. Item 9, $62. Dinner at the Dunes, party of 3. Included in said party, me and Haig. Expense account, item 9, airfare Palm Springs to Los Angeles to Hartford, $244.04. Expense account total, $1,211.69. All that for getting rid of a doctor. And if you react the same way you reacted to my last expense account, it'll probably mean that you will be needing a doctor. Signed, yours, truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, is produced and directed by Gordon T. Hughes and stars Charles Russell. Script by Paul Dudley and Gil Dowd. Featured in the cast were Willard Waterman, Betty Lou Gerson, Larry Dobkin, Paul Dubov, Georgia Ellis, and Edmund McDonald. The special music is written and conducted by Wilbur Hatch. Be sure to be with us next week when another unusual expense account is handed in by
yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Stay tuned for Vaughn Monroe and his Caravan, which follows immediately over most of these same stations. Paul Masterson speaking. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Welcome back. This was actually a really fun episode. The one I liked the part where he met with the guy from the insurance company and they complained about the expense account. And one thing he particularly complained about was the practice of giving dollar tips for rides that cost less than $1. And Johnny Dollar put right on his expense account 80 cent fare, $1 tip. And actually what the insurance company executive complains about is what a lot of critics complain about this portion of the Johnny Dollar canon. And under Edmund O'Brien, the dollar tip thing goes away. And ironically enough, because of inflation, if you go around handing dollar tips, people aren't going to be like in that one episode where you have steak tonight. They're going to be like, oh, how cheap. But, you know, I actually like the dollar tips with Russell because it's one of those great idiosyncrasies. I think there's a lot of fun little things in Charles Russell's portrayal of Johnny Dollar that's kind of different, and I think in a really nice way. So I'm definitely a fan of this part of the series. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Got any comments? Send it my way. box13@greatdetectives.net. Remember our Facebook page, facebook.greatdetectives.net. This is your last chance to vote on how we do the ads. And also, please cast your vote for the show on Podcast Alley, both in February and now March coming up. But from Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham, signing off.